Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Just to make you aware, this podcast may contain some explicit/offensive language, and if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen, but I have given you a warning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't know the half of it, but anyway. I'm skating on the thinnest ice known to man.
He said, and they put a poison in the tank that just instantly kills them. He went and we'd run out of it, so we cut their heads off with shovels.
Suddenly, bang! The whole boat exploded.
Take your sort of 8-inch long piranha and imagine that at 4, 5, maybe 6 feet.
I said, I've revived your dead fish. F off, he said. You haven't.
That was just humongous. It was... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
I'm just battling this fish out in the pond. I know it's a black man. I'm saying I'll never be a naughty boy again.
If you catch fish and you return them to the water, then you are my brother.
Joe Wright, welcome to the Nash podcast, mate. How the devil are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
And mate, anytime. I have got a massive amount to thank you for. I've said it before with previous guests in terms of influence and people that I've looked up to, but tangibly, definitely, I would not be sat in this seat doing this job, annoying thousands of people on the weekly basis if it wasn't for you, mate. So I have to say a massive thank you for giving me the chance to start a career in fishing, mate.
That's very kind. Very kind.
Very true.
It's not strictly true.
It is.
No, I think your talent would have come through, and
in that case,
you would have
absolutely screwed.
No, that's very kind of you to say, but that's not. I think, your talent would have got you to where you are.
It's definitely not, mate, but thank you very much. We will talk about all those things in due course. You are obviously Mr. Carpology, along with Rob, who's not here because he's bottled the interview.
He's bottled it, yeah. He wouldn't come on.
Rob. When I see you at a show, I'll give you the outtakes of what happened here, mate, when we really talk about it. No, I'm joking. But genuinely, thank you for coming in, mate. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about your life in terms of carp fishing media, also carp fishing and you as an individual. We've talked about it on the phone. I've obviously worked with you. I think it's an incredible story and a story that probably people don't know. They might have got the magazine. They've definitely seen, obviously, in more recent times, the YouTube channel, everything that Carpology is about, the fact that it's lasted the course when print seems to have waned off, is still going strong. But your story and how you've made it be and the influence you've had over a significant amount of years is nothing short of, inspiring, mate, I think. It's incredible.
Thank you very much.
How long's it been going for?
So the first issue came out in Feb 2004, but Rob and I set up the business in September 2003. So
wow,
it'll be 20 years in September since the business was formed, and then next Feb will be 20 years of it actually being on sale.
Yeah, that's some achievement, especially in print, mate, in this modern day and age, isn't it? That's good going. When you look back at that, did you ever think it was going to be a 20-year span?
I don't know. I don't think I ever thought that far ahead. I don't suspect I ever thought 20 years further down the line, particularly in the early years. It was about survival, but it was so much fun in those early years. That was the key part of it. It was a mixture of being survival element, but it was just so much fun doing it. We didn't really have it. Well, I certainly didn't have anything to lose. Rob was different because he had a mortgage and a family. I was 21, so at that stage I didn't really. I moved back from Sheffield to live with my dad, so I was with him. So my overheads were minimal, so it didn't really. But again, I just don't think we ever thought of it. It was just this. We wanted to. I always wanted a magazine. That was like a thing from very, very young. I was obsessed weirdly with magazines, and then Carp World was just my Bible, getting it every month. And I suppose, and then I kept writing to. Going back, kept writing to go to work for Carp World, and then having a magazine was always the ultimate. So I don't think I ever went beyond just having a magazine. It was like, get to that, and then what happens afterwards happens, basically.
That's the dream. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Before we go down the magazine route and talk about all things Carpology, mate, you fishing, carp fishing. Talk to me about that. How did you all get, obviously to start a magazine in it, you've got to have a passion for it. Where did that passion come from? What did that look like in terms of your angling before all this started?
So started really young. I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were quite fortunate in the garden of a family home. We had quite a big pond full of roach and crucian carp. And no one in my family fished. I don't know what it was. It was just something about water, being by water, seeing the fish, and then I just wanted to have a go at trying to catch them. So mum and dad bought me a telescopic rod, and then it was from there, just fell in love with it. Then went from there, fished on the rivers. I'm really close to the River Waverney, so did a lot of chub fishing down there.
So Norfolk, isn't he?
And then from there, sort of where I progressed into carp fishing, I would have probably been 11, 12, 13, Weyborough pits. And then from Weyborough, fished on Waveney Valley, which was sort of in it, would have been mid-90s. At that point. So it was still sort of, quite in its heyday. It was very well known at that point. And then just started fishing various other places, went to a lot of the Carp Society junior fishings at Horseshoe. Became a bit obsessed with Redmire, fished there quite a few times. From my first trip was when I was 17. Really fell in love with that place. And then with work, I then fished when I worked for Angling Publications. Went all over the country, fished loads and loads of different syndicates to club tickets to day tickets. And then in recent time, I do a lot less fishing now than I used to. But that's sort of my from childhood up until now, really.
Significant captures? You talked about Waveney Valley Lakes there. But
yes.
Sort of between that carp wise, what significant things do you remember from back then?
So in terms of catches, 5-star was a particularly well-known one at D Lake. I caught that odd bod. There was a few of the known ones at G Lake that I caught. And then Redmire, I was fortunate enough to catch raspberry, which I was 17 when I caught it. It was 67 years old at the time.
How'd you catch that?
Well, yeah, it wasn't selected. It was really by chance. But it was an incredible trip. It was in September. I think it was September 1999. And yeah, at the time I didn't realise that it was raspberry. It was only when I sent it into Carp Talk that I think it was Paddy Webb saw it and recognised it, and then I think he asked Chris Ball, and then they basically, I think they might have phoned me and said, "Do you realise you've caught carp that's 67 years old and got an incredible history?" And yeah, that was an amazing fish. At the time, like a lot of things in life, when you sort of look back at it, you realise how amazing that was to hold a fish that's that old, that's been caught by some amazing anglers.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Waveney, just learned a lot of different things on it at the time. Tony Knox, who owned it at that point, sort of took me under his wing and taught me quite a lot. Like rigs and watercraft, those sort of things. So it was a good learning ground.
Take me back to raspberry, mate. Methods, baits.
So I think it would have been on Richworth Multiplex. Do you remember Richworth Multiplex?
Yes, I do, mate.
And then I'm trying to think. It was a weekend, so it was the Friday till the Sunday, and turned up fishing in Keffords. And still got all the map and the letter that I got from Les Bamford when I did the booking, and I'd marked up on the map, like, I think I'd even marked up where I wanted to go from watching Passion for Angling. So I watched that so many times, and then turned up and then went in Keffords, and then the plan was to fish Keffords during the night and then stalk in the shallows during the day, and it was an amazing trip. And then it was I think it was the early hours of Sunday morning, had a very twitchy take. And I remember thinking all the way in, I thought it was an eel. And I was thinking, oh man, I don't want to catch an eel. And it was such an odd fight. It really, really did feel like an eel. And then sort of bundled it in the net and went and got a torch out my bivvy. I was like, it's a carp. I couldn't believe it. And then I went down and woke up one of the guys that was on, because there was only 3 of us on. I think I'm right in saying that, because it's normally 4.
Yeah.
But there was 2 other guys that had come as a pair, and I went down and woke one of them up, and he came up and took pictures of it. And like I say, at the time, I just caught this 26 pound. It was 26.4. Beautiful leather carp.
Yeah.
Old as the hills, but I sort of didn't really appreciate it for what it was at that moment in time. And then it was only when I sent it off to Carp Talk that I got the phone call to say, "You've caught this really old carp."
Was Redmire, I don't know, as atmospheric as sort of, meaningful is a horrible way of putting it, but as sort of magical as all those tales, that passion for angling films that you've watched about it, and the significance that it holds in a lot of people's sort of perceptions and heart, reading all that, is that significant when you went on there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the moment driving down that driveway and then going down the hill down to the valley, it's just, it's magical. Yeah, particularly it was early, sort of coming late summer into early autumn. Yeah. It just looked amazing. And it was everything I imagined it to be. And every session thereafter, I went, I think I went February time, so it was pretty bleak. It was at the lowest it's been, and it was still magical. And I've been in the summer, did 5 days with Sharpie, which would have been the week before Bank Holiday August, so it was getting towards the end of summer, but it was just amazing. Yeah, every time. I haven't been since they've done the restoration to it.
I was going to say, have you been subsequently? No.
I think the last time I've been was with Sharpie, which was 2007, so it's a long time. And I would love to go back. It's just, haven't applied for it.
To be fair, you said here, mate, you haven't been here to Nash HQ for a good few years, have you?
No, a long time. It's changed quite a bit. Yeah,
crazy. You've done a lot, mate, especially when we're going to talk through those significant chapters. You've done a lot, and you've also been in and around sort of those echelons of angler and places to angle that are, some people dream of fishing them, mate. To catch that fish, I didn't realise you caught raspberry.
Yeah.
That weren't in the plan, boy. Jeez Louise. What about Waverney? You said it had a big significance on you. Tony Knox taking you under your wing, sort of guiding you around watercraft, rigs. At that period of time for you, the sort of development in your angling, what did that look like? Was it very much a case of sort of just getting a bite, then learning sort of how to get more bites, then trying to catch a bigger one? Was it that typical progression, or was it just enjoying your time on that complex?
I think a bit of both, really. I remember significance of Waverney. I remember Tony showing me the stiff rig, so like a standard D rig setup, and then at later stage, I remember being very influenced by. It would have been towards the latter stage of it. Yeah, because I probably would have been about 17, 18 at that stage of Terry Hearn. You know, that was just a massive, like, hinge stiff link, Neville's, just trying to dress like him. I remember like having, because he had full Duplo rods pre-ESP, and the only ones I remember seeing I could get were by Giant. Do you remember Giant Leader did it? It was a sub-brand of Leader. Right. And they were sort of like a burgundy colour, but I remember having them, and then didn't have emblems, but I just tried to mimic everything that Terry Hearn did. So I think I got sort of like caught up in that really for a period of time. But yeah, I remember the sort of two things were rig related, was the hinge stiff link and a D rig, clone rig.
That's all you need, mate.
Yeah,
and some boilies, and you're off.
Yeah, I suppose I did. Yeah, learn other methods like PVA bagging as well. That became a big thing. That was sort of something I learned from one of the junior carp schools.
On Horseshoe, you were saying?
Horseshoe, yes. This would have been like late 90s, early 2000s. Like bagging and then taking that back and using it on Waveney.
What was that like, going to Horseshoe and fishing? Who was there at the fishings in terms of? So
in terms of, well, it was a who's who of carp fishing back then. Like everyone turned up for it for the as the helpers. The biggest influence would have been there was Tim Paisley. But there was quite a few of the guys that you see now were there that I remember from when I went to that junior fishing. You know, I'm trying to think of who that, like Ben O'Connor. I'm sure he was there. My mind's gone blank now. But there was quite a few of the lads that you still see now that either work in industry or a renowned fisherman.
What was Paisley like?
He was a hero to me. Yeah,
an idol. Yeah,
proper idol.
What was it like meeting him? He's
very intimidated. Yeah, and then later
he's
working
got that
with
aura
him.
about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and particularly when I worked with him, which would have been sort of 2001. He was just like the sort of the chief of carp fishing, wasn't he? He was like the CEO overseeing everything. He was like a major player in carp fishing. So he was because he was like my big boss, and there was Julian Cundiff, who was sort of the day-to-day boss, and Jules was like the nice guy, and you're always like happy to see Jules, but Tim, you always want to see him, but you're always so intimidated.
I tell you who I would not want to rollicking off Paisley, mate.
Yeah.
I'd take the Jules rollicking all day long.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't think I ever did get a
You're not
rollicking.
getting one off Jules, are you?
No, but I don't think I did it off Tim, actually. I'm trying to think if Tim ever... No, I don't ever remember him getting too angry with me. But yeah.
He's some boy, isn't he?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Angling wise on Horseshoe, how did you find that compared to Waverney? Bit different?
That was a big culture shock
Yeah.
because it was just weed. Like Waverney is just, it's old gravel pits, so a lot of gravel, a lot of silt, where Horseshoe obviously as well, a lot of gravel, but there's a lot of weed, and there wasn't weed in Waverney. And yeah, I remember turning up and fishing in Summer Bay and just being like, wow, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Help!
So it was good though. It was a steep learning curve. But yeah, I did really enjoy it. Gaz Ferrum, he was on one of the schools as well.
Was he?
Yeah, Gaz was there. I'll have names that will suddenly ping back to me. Yeah.
Some fishing. You said there, you referenced earlier on, you always wanted to have a magazine. Obviously, carp fishing came into sort of one of your passions and things to do. Was it always a carp fishing magazine, or was it any magazine? Were you as in love with sort of journalism, the written word, editorial stuff, as you were with carp fishing, or was it always carp fishing and that avenue was what you were going to do to express it?
Originally it was just carp fishing. There was a period of time where I nearly did. I called it simple course fishing. It never really had any legs, but before I started working for Angling Publications, who published Carp World and Crafty Carper, I produced like a free magazine. It was a pamphlet, basically. It was like A5.
So what are you doing at this time? Is it you done uni? Have you done all that?
So I probably was still at school at that point.
Jesus.
So I'd have been like year 10, year 11 when I first started this. It was called Younger Carpers because Carp World did a segment called Young Carpers. And I was going to call it Young Carpers, and I told Jules about it, and Jules said, like, I don't think you can call it the same as Carp World, so just call it like Younger Carpers. So I called it Younger Carpers Club, and it was just printed out on my bubble jet printer at home, and then folded and got a big stapler and stapled it together, and I had Jules let me put a little thing in the Young Carpers section in Carp World to promote it.
Okay.
So I don't know, one star. I can't remember how it all panned out. Like, it sort of progressed. I think I say it was free. I think I charged £3 for the year. So it wouldn't have even covered the postage. I think I had like 20 members at one stage. And then when I started working at Carp or Angling Pubs, I wanted to make it bigger. And I thought the best way of doing it to reach a bigger audience would be to just do general course fishing. So I changed the name of it to Simple or Simply Course Fishing, and had it printed rather than on a bubble jet on a professional printer, and I think I changed it at that point to being free, and then going to get some advertising and bits off people. So that's the route I went, and then in the end, how Carpology came about is that I was just like, actually, my passion is just carp fishing, so that's what I want to focus on, and just do a carp fishing magazine.
Talk to me about that journey, because that's a pivotal point. Like, obviously, you've got a lot of influence and a lot of relationship with some of the people at the top end, especially editorial and writing. Tim, you've referenced. Jules, you've referenced. The junior fishing, you've referenced. So sort of network-wise, you built up there with key people within it. To go from there, school or whatever your education pathway was, and then into that angling publications job. Because angling publications, you said it before with Tim, he pretty much made or broke whoever was at the perceived top end of angling, because it was the only media outlet.
Yes,
all you'd see would be those anglers, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If he chose you and you were in each edition, then your profile was X, and if he didn't, then your profile was Y. For you to then go into that environment, to get into there, what went into that, mate?
So to get to the with the job with AP was just persistence, really. I just kept writing to them. I think the route in is because this would have been 2000, 2001. So websites just weren't really in existence. If they were very basic. But I told them that I could build websites, that I could do it. And I sort of knew a little bit, but not really a lot. But I basically went with this, that I could help build them a website for Crafty Carper and Carp World. And I don't know if I got a reply first of all, and I wrote to them again. I think they wrote back and said, we haven't got anything at the moment. We'll keep your details on record. And then out of the blue, I then got a letter from Jemima saying, could I come up to have a meeting with them? And so I travelled up to Sheffield. And it never really said I was going for a job interview. They just said, can you come up? So obviously I assumed it was because of the fact I'd been writing to them for so long. And then they said, we'd like to come and work for us and help build these websites. So,
my God.
So yes, initially I lived with my sister in Nottingham, and then used to get the train up to Sheffield, and then from the train station walk up to the office and then back, and did that Monday to Friday, and then Friday I'd get the train all the way back to Norfolk and then come back, spend the weekend in Norfolk because I had a girlfriend here at the time, and then go back up. So I was here for the weekend, then back up during the week. And then after 3 months, I then moved to Sheffield, and then ended up living there.
What was Sheffield like, mate, compared to Norfolk? That seems a bit different.
Yeah, it was. I think the lifestyle, what was so different about it is I was living with students. So I was sort of getting a student lifestyle. They were like third year students, so they weren't like first year students. It wasn't like crazy,
freshers.
But but it was. I got a taste of student life whilst I was working, and then I've lost my thought of Fred now.
Yes, the change from sort of nice, relaxed, sedate Norfolk to crazy Sheffield.
Yeah,
madness. Enjoy that.
Yeah, to an extent. I never properly settled though, because I was still always coming back at the weekends. So by this point, they've got a car for me. So I was doing a lot more features then, because we got to the point where I think they realised I couldn't really build a website. So they got Richard Stangroom, who does advanced web designs, I think it is. He was one of the early people to get onto web designs, and he helped. My shortcomings getting this site so it worked, and then from that they then sort of thought, right, I'm not very good at that, and then we moved on to doing more editorial stuff, and I then progressed down that route. But that was sort of my in of doing a website for them.
So you blagged your way in, and then realised that you couldn't deliver on your blag. You've got Tim, Pip, Jemima in terms of the people that are sort of there that you're dealing with day to day. Is it bigger than that? Was there any more?
Yeah, there was quite a few there.
Oh, was it?
It got a lot bigger after I left. When I was there was Procky, Sandra Proctor, Corin, and the design at that point was all done over at Carp Talk, where shortly after I left, they brought it in-house and they moved offices. They relocated. And this would have been I think Lewis Porter, because he was the editor of Craft.
I
think he was a couple of years after I left. So I didn't work with any of those guys. Okay. At that point, there wasn't, where they had quite a young team. Later on, I was the youngest by quite some margin. And it was a lot smaller just because they outsourced the design.
So your work there evolved basically around features, editorial stuff.
Yeah. So ultimately, that's what it progressed to, and that was what obviously ultimately I really wanted to do. And it started with I sort of just put myself up for everything. It wasn't so much going out. It was with features. It was day ticket reviews, like a top 50. So I'd phone around all the day ticket reviews, all the day ticket venues, and collect information about how they'd been fishing for that month. Because again, you didn't have social media. You didn't have you had updates and occasional ones in Carp Talk.
Is this your idea? Yeah.
I think it would have been Jules.
Right,
Jules probably would have come up. But most of the ideas were Jules. He did come up with really good editorial concepts. And then there was bait features, things that I could shoot and write in house. That was how it sort of started. Then I got my first feature was with Nick Hellier with the stick. So do you remember when the dynamite stick first came? So it was like incredible first outing to go and see that, and the effect of that was just mind blowing. Like how effective that was at that time.
Where was it?
So that was on Hardwick at Linear, so Hardwick Smiths, and that was the first actual in session feature that I went and shot.
What was Nick like?
It was just a phenomenal angler. Like everything's so smooth, it just makes everything look so easy. And then particularly with that dynamite stick, it was just. And I can remember after I'd seen him do it, because this was very early. It was just people were starting to talk about. Well, I think he'd done one feature on it in Advanced Carp the month before we did it. And I can remember after I'd done that feature coming back and using it on one of the lakes at Waverney, and it was just incredible. Like catch was, it was just amazing. Like it just worked so well. It was a proper edge at the time.
There was years that I used to fish. I couldn't imagine casting it without a stick on.
Yeah. No one seems to really do it now. It's like a
bring back the stick. And also, to be fair, as a first feature, I mean, if you're a proper die-hard carp angler, you know Nick Elliott. Like, he's a known sort of big un, isn't he? He's an A-lister. What was it like rocking up to like, hello, I'm Joe?
I remember I remember sort of being in awe of how little tackle he had, but how organised he was and how he had everything he needed. Because I would fish on these features as well. That was the time, because again, shooting a magazine feature at that point, you would go out for sort of 2-3 days. Where now you'd never dream of doing that. That just wouldn't happen on a video shoot, maybe, but on a magazine feature,
absolute jolly.
It was amazing because you could, and you could. It didn't have to go on a timeline. Because obviously you could just do it at a later date. It didn't matter. So I'd always take my fishing stuff and go fishing. And I remember with Nick, we moved from one point fishing into Hardwick and then walked all the way around that sort of bottom bit of Smiths. Yeah. And then to go on the other side of the point. And he did it in one go. This is like, I say pre-barrows. He didn't have a barrow. And I think it took me 2 or 3 times to get around. Dragging all my kit around.
You catch? Did you catch?
I didn't catch. He did. He caught 2. Yeah.
God,
it was it was amazing. And then from there, I think the next trip was with Terry Hearn on the estate lake.
Shut up, Joe.
It was just like, it was incredible. Yeah, when Tim said, right, we want you to start doing some in session features. It was honestly, Hassan. Just thinking back on it now, it was incredible time. Again, you know that it's amazing, but it's only with hindsight you think, wow, that really was amazing. Like 3 nights, 2 nights, 3 days on the estate lake with Terry Hearn.
That is. Can you imagine the auction prize cost of that now?
Yeah. Oh, it was just
millions, mate.
It was.
Second job out with Terry.
I'm sure it was the second one. If it was within a month anyway.
Imagine if you had Insta back then.
Yeah.
Just out with Sal on the old estate lake marsh. Did you catch one at the estate lake?
Yes, yeah. I think I had 2 or 3 from there. I think Sal had 2 or 3 as well. Yeah.
And what was Terry like in terms of, like, were you not absolutely crippled with like stage fright?
Yeah, 100%. And it was the period where he was fishing on Sonning. After the eye,
yeah.
And he when he was there, I could tell he was itching to get back because he'd just like given it a big hit of bait just before he left. Then he did this feature with me on the estate lake, and then he was going straight from there back to Sonning. But yeah, it was incredible. Like, fishing with him, like fish from the punt to start with, and then fish from that. I don't know if you know the lake. It's the one where they film like ESP when they do a video shoot. Yes. There, it's sort of a point that goes out to the island.
Yes.
So we were off there.
I've seen it in that the video that he did not too long ago, a few years back now, probably actually at Christmas. Yeah.
A beautiful place, like absolutely incredible.
Fish look incredible as well.
Yeah. Just the setting is just amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Some place.
So yeah,
they say don't meet your heroes or your idols, mate. What was the sort of overall theme for Terry? Because everybody talks about, like we've talked about Redmire, the atmosphere, the magic, the sort of that, and I think you see all that in terms of like his writing, the way he tells a story, the way he paints a picture, and I can only go because I've never like spent some tangible time with him. The stories, like around a fire or around, I don't know, having some food in the evening or just seeing him angle, there must be like carpiness dripping off him, mate, no? Is there not?
Oh, yeah. It's, it was amazing. It's, again, I suppose just, you sort of don't realise, fully appreciate, because I was so young, that's the thing, I think. I did appreciate it, because it was amazing. But, yeah, to do it now would be like amazing because you just fully embrace it more.
Was his angling like just different? Was he like different gravy?
Again, he's just a bit like, well, all the best anglers I've been out with, I suppose their number one is the work ethic. You know, they're just relentless with things, and I suppose you could say that about any top athlete, couldn't you? You know, the ones that are the best are the ones that just put in more effort than everyone else. You know, they're just relentless with it. And then with Terry, I suppose it's just finesse. It's just so smooth. Everything's so neat. Like the rigs, like Nigel's the same. They just look perfect. And then when he does things, you just sort of think, if I did that, I wouldn't do that as smooth as that. Like watching Nigel the other day with a baiting pole, even that he's come up with some little tricks that you're like, most people probably won't have even thought of doing them, and he just does it so well. And that's what Terry was like. Well, he's like, you know, they just make it look easy. But they just work as well.
Some job that, mate.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
And then in terms of the written sort of the article and the editorial, the stuff afterwards, did that side of stuff, which is obviously the side that probably not a lot of people see, the actual process of putting this on paper for people to read and enjoy, did that always come easy?
Yeah, to an extent. I think the back in those days, it was all slide film, so there was that pressure of taking your shots and hoping they're going to be good shots, and there was the excitement of getting them developed. And in those days, AP always used really good film, and they were developed by a really good repro company, so you got really nice shots. So that was obviously different to now. And then the writing part of it, I suppose it doesn't come really easy to me. Like I'm not like if you ask my sub editor Mark when he subs my stuff, it's not like great, but I think I've just got such a passion for it. I sort of just get by with it really. But I really enjoy the whole process. And later on, owning then starting a magazine, it's the design element that I love. That's the other part. It's the creating something. And I think where if I had any expertise, it would be, I suppose, it's in the finer details. It's like seeing the smaller things that say Rob would miss. Like he wouldn't see those things. Where that's sort of the bit that I enjoy looking out for and working on. I think that's where I sort of excel. So yeah, I think it's the process of bringing it all together. Is the part of it that I love the most. It's sort of overseeing it, bringing it all together, and then packaging it in a way that when someone picks up the magazine, it's like there's lots in there. You know, there was always a thing of Carpology. I suppose it is my style. Like anything I've produced, it's always the same. There's always it's sort of layered. There's so much in there that you can pick it up and then you can put it down and you'll find something else. And then just the flow of the magazine, like the pace of it, like where you put articles in and how one article follows another and where you position the reviews and how the ads sit within it. It's all those things. That's the bit that I get the buzz out of. Actually writing lots of stuff, I'm not that bothered about anymore. It's more the overseeing of the production that I really, really enjoy.
Well, that's interesting, mate. Okay. For you, we'll go back to those AP years. You talked about Terry Hearn, Nick Elliott. You've obviously had a nice run. Obviously, it's hard work, but you've had a nice run of being able to go out, do a bit of fishing, meet the creme de la creme, fish with them, obviously get some content at the back of them, fish wherever they might be fishing or wherever they may take you. Where, in that period of time at angling pubs, did you go? Who did you go with? What did you catch that sticks out when you sort of look back, apart from the two chapters you've obviously talked about?
There was lots of places that I visited, like the usual Linear, Orchid. I'm trying to think of the other sort of bigger lakes. Went to Medine with Team Carp World. We did the World Cup Classic over there. It's annoying, so my memory's gone completely blank. But just there's so many places that I went to, like the renowned fisheries now that I got to fish. Fish with Rod Hutchinson.
You fished with Rod?
That was pretty amazing.
I thought, how can you trump tell? But
that was a feature that Tim came up with called Hello, exclamation mark at the end of it. It was like sort of a play on the magazine. And it was for me to spend sort of usually 48 hours with a really big named angler or someone that owns a business within carp fishing, and stay at their house, have dinner with them, and it was all those things. So with Rod, I didn't stay at his house. We fished on a couple of his lakes, but I went to the factory and spent basically 48 hours with him, which was obviously amazing. Like that's quite vivid. Driving back from there, trying to work out how I was going to do the introduction for that particular article. Did one with Husey. That was really nice. I stayed in his house and fished his lake in the garden, and it was.
What's Rod Hutchinson? Absolute legend. Everybody talks incredibly, like, in terms of his character and like him being like off the wall.
Yeah,
they're the endearing moments, apart from his fishing and what he'd done for obviously carp fishing in general. But his personality, what he was about, the man, if you like, he's definitely sort of been romanticised about by loads of different people. Again, I was unfortunate never to meet him. You're sort of spending concentrated period of time with him and going fishing with him. Massive character and like a big bloke as well. And he's like a Pete Regan and a Simon Crowe. Just from my memory of when I fished with him, like sort of it was very basic on the surface fishing, like Crowe, braided hook link, bottom bait, lead clip, and that was sort of what it was like with Rod. But just their watercraft and knowing where to put it and how things are going to evolve is just second to none. And that's what it was like when because I think I turned up on Worldview and he had one in the net waiting for me. And then did you get a brace shot with Rod Hutchinson?
No, I didn't get a brace shot. No, it would have been a good one.
That'd be the one.
But like that was incredible. Going out with Rod. Birch Grove, fished on Birch. Never got to fish mangrove. I'd love to fish mangrove. But did opening week. That was with Tim. Got invited down to he was filming a new Birch Grove. Like he did one back in the late 90s, I think it was. Okay. Birch Grove 1 and 2, I think they were called, with John Lilly. And he was doing another one. This would have been 2001, so maybe 2002. And he asked me to go down to take some photos to do a mag feature on it, and then I'd get to fish as well. So I think I arrived on the 17th, but I had like 3 days. It was mega. Like I was very, very fortunate. I owe a lot to all of them there.
I don't think those times will ever be repeated in terms of where things were with media. The figures that were sort of, obviously they're more pertinent now because they've done more. Yeah. If they're still around, obviously not in the case of Rod, unfortunately. But you're never going to be in a position where you're probably going to have that access or that ability to be able to go out with all the very best of the best at the time across all brands, across everywhere, fish with them and spend that time with them. Yeah. It wouldn't happen, would it?
It just wouldn't happen. And I think now as well, it's so different. When I was doing that, like I said, I was 18, 19. There weren't any other me's at that point. Like now, there's loads of young people in carp fishing making, in editorial content creation roles. It just wasn't like that back in 2000. You had Jim Foster on Total Carp and Advanced Carp. I think that was it. It was just so it was to have access to those people. Like I wouldn't ever get 48 hours with Tell now. It just wouldn't happen. Like you said, I just don't think that'll ever be recreated.
Don't know. You might be able to give them a bell, mate. See if you're real old time. Can I go to that state lake, please, Tell? In terms of nightmares, shockers, sort of maybe funny things that happen during that time. You're spending a lot of time on the road. You're a young man. You're thirsty for it. You're meeting all these people. You have got the pressure of sort of deadlines and producing something. Yeah. Will anything along those lines happen along the way? I can't imagine you having a shocker, mate.
I'm sure I did. I remember the first, luckily it wasn't a major thing, but when Tim gave me, when we first started doing the in-house sort of content, so bait features, the data kit write-ups, we set up a small studio in the top floor, or the top room and on the top floor of the office. And I reeled off, like you said, just practice taking pictures. And I reeled off 2 films. They were all out of focus. I don't know. For some reason, I thought it'd be better. I was in my head. It was like shooting it on manual. I was like, if I shoot it on manual, it'd be better than shooting it in autofocus. And they were all out of focus. So luckily, it didn't really matter. But that was like quite an embarrassing moment when they came back and I showed Tim, and he was like, they're all out of focus. But in terms of writing up features and shooting them, there's nothing that stands out that caused a big issue.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that really was a major thing.
Any funny moments along the way, out and about, or whether that be in the office or not?
Again, nothing right. Yeah, I can't think of anything that's. Sorry, I'm not giving you a lot here, but I can't. I can't. Yeah, there's nothing that really stands out, to be honest.
What a time! How long were you there for in that role?
Not long enough, really. I was only there for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And yeah, I think I shouldn't have regrets. I'm not regretting it, but like, if my sons were in the same position, I would tell them to, like, you know, if they're working with the equivalent of Tim Paisley and Julian Cundiff, I'd be like, you need to get the maximum out of them, because they are, you know, they were right up there. And I could have learned more than I did. And I learned a lot more later on when I started on my own. I might have just been being hard on myself. I don't know, but I just think if I could have my time again, I would make sure I learned a lot more from them, because yeah, to have access to two people like that, with hindsight, I don't think I really milked as much information out of them as I could. But yeah, 2.5 years in total. What was the sort of end to that chapter at Angling Publication? Obviously, for a lot of people, mate, that's a dream job. Yeah. And that could be you for life, couldn't it? Quite easily. No? Like easily. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would have enjoyed being there. I think the deciding factors were I don't know if I ever really wanted to move up to Sheffield. I think that would have been a big thing. Hence why I was always commuting back every weekend. And I think ultimately I always wanted my own thing. I think that's what would have always happened. I always wanted to have, like, to be mine, because I wanted to be able to do it how I wanted to do it. And that's not to say I wasn't they let me get on and do the features I did. You know, I had it really easy, to be honest, but it was just, I always wanted to do something for myself. So that's ultimately why I think it happened. If it hadn't have happened then, I would have probably done it a year later, or, you know, it was always going to happen at some stage. That process of sort of, yeah, as you say, wanting your own thing, starting your own thing, how did you go about that? That's a massive call, isn't it? Yeah. I don't think people, like, I'm trying to think that, I know people say now, like, the self-employed route, there's a lot of videographers doing it. There's a lot of people doing it within the trade where they've got their own thing. It might be connected to a couple of companies, but they're going out on their own. Nowadays, like, I think that's a little bit more acceptable. It's still a punt and it's still a risk or whatever, but I get it. Back then, you're in a company that's producing all the media. There's not that much media about, and I'm not talking video, I'm talking about written content, and you want to do your own thing. That seems bold, especially for a young lad who has spent 2 years with, like, the people who are doing it. How does that go about in your head? How do events fall in that you then start your own thing? I think it happened. Like the short version is, I was doing the magazine, the Simply Course Fishing, and I said to Tony Knox at Waverney Valley, I was telling him about what I was doing with this sort of sideline magazine. Like I say, it wasn't really a magazine. It was, you know, it was printed on nice paper at this point, but it was like 8 pages, and it was quarterly, and I didn't ever hit a deadline when I was going to have it sent out. But it was like a thing that was, you know, in essence, it is Carpology, but it's just a very watered down version. And then I told Tony about it, and Tony said, "Oh, you should speak to one of the guys that comes up here called Rob Bell. He lives in London, and he's a print farmer. He might be able to get you a good price on the print to get it printed." So I said, "Oh, okay, great." So I then must have got Rob's number, and I met him. I don't know where, it was winter, it was freezing cold, on a Sunday when I'd come back from Sheffield. Met him down at Waverney Valley on Marsh Lake. And so I went over, introduced myself, and he said, "Oh, what do you think of doing?" I said this, and he said, "Yeah, I'll leave it with me. I'll see what I can do." Anyway, phoned me back, I can't remember now, a week later, and said, "Yeah, I can get a price for this, but have you ever thought about making it into like a big proper magazine?" He said, I do the repro and the production for a publication called Rider's Digest, which was for courier firms that at depots and drop-offs, they would have these A5 sack of magazines. It was free and it was funded by advertising. And he said, "You know, have you ever thought of doing that?" And I said, well, I haven't. And I sort of was thinking about it. I thought, that sounds like a genius idea. Like, if we can say we'll print, because at this point, total Carp probably would have been 20,000. I think it topped at 25, but that was at about 20,000 at that point.
A month.
That's what Total was doing. And then like Carp World was probably 15, 16, and Crafty was about the same. And they said, and I thought, well, yeah, if we print like 40,000 copies and then go to the advertisers and say we're distributing 40,000 magazines, we're just going to cash in. Like, there was no social media.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I thought about it. And I remember telling my dad, and he was like, he said, it sounds a bit too easy. And I said, well, it does, but it sounds like a great idea. And then I think we must have just sort of sat on it and thought about it some more. And then I'll be honest, I can't remember the jump from, I don't know the timeline, but then I do remember I'd only met Rob 3 times. So on the 3rd time, I went down. He'd moved up from London to Norfolk because he was relocating up here anyway. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And by this point, I think I'd told Damien Clark of Corda.
Yeah.
Because I again done features with Damo, with Danny as well, like in the AP days. So I knew sort of Damo well, but I knew him reasonably well. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, do you want me to speak to John Hannon, who was doing all their ads at that point, because he lives in Norwich, which is where I lived close to Norwich. Maybe he could design it, because obviously then you're going to have potentially a really good concept with an amazing designer. So he put me in touch with John, and then John got in touch and said, let's all meet. So me, Rob and John all met up. And then, yeah, it just went from there. It was sort of a bit of a knee-jerk. Well, was it? I don't know. Again, it's the timeline. I can't put timestamps on it now, but it sort of, we went from 3rd time meeting Rob, met Johon. Yeah, let's do this. Nothing was really going to change for John. He was going to be doing it aside from his
Corda stuff.
Yeah, his Corda, and he was doing Gardner, Shimano, because that was the other thing. Because of his contacts there, we sort of could go, well, they'll definitely advertise. Yeah,
the network's there, isn't it?
Yeah, and then went back, handed him a notice in, which was quite tough.
How did that go down? Because you're going to, I'd imagine, I wouldn't want to hammer notice into Paisley if I'm starting another magazine. I'd be quite scared.
Yeah, that was the thing. Again, with hindsight, I don't know, would I have done it differently? I didn't tell Tim I was going to set up a magazine.
Okay.
I remember they all knew that I'd said I basically wanted a break and I was going to go travelling. And I think they all knew that wasn't strictly true. And I remember going over to Carp Talk to drop some slides off, and Crowe was like, come on then, because Crowe was working there. So like, he thought I was going to Nash. That's it. He thought I was going to go and come and work for Nash Tackle. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm really going, I am going travelling. So it was like, it was awful because I was just blatantly lying. But the reason why, like me, Rob and John, I think we discussed it because I was really nervous about it. Yeah. And we said, well, I think it's better if we go this route because Tim's influence was so great at that point that we were like, if we say, he might not have done this, I don't know, but this is just what we were thinking at the time, that he might say, because he's got so much power over these advertisers, if you advertise with Carpology, then we're not not do anything with you guys. So we did that it was always going to come out just before, obviously as soon as the issue came out, but we wanted to get to the point where we had everything ready to go before potentially, something pulls the plug on it. So it wasn't, I still feel bad about it. I probably wouldn't do it like that now if I was older.
Spoke to him since?
So I've never actually spoken to him face to face or on the phone. We liaise quite a lot via email because he now writes.
I was going to say, he's in Carp.
Yeah, he does a monthly column for us, which is amazing. Like I reached out to Jules probably a year ago and said, I really, really want to do a piece with Tim, like a big 4, 5, 6 part interview about his carp fishing career. I don't know the best way of going about it. Is it better if you speak to him? Because I haven't spoken to him for 15 years and I don't know how he feels about me. So Jules said, okay, leave it with me. And he came back and said, yeah, Tim is surprisingly up for it. So I was like, great. And then we've just liaised via email, probably weekly, to be honest.
I think I remember vividly going to his place to do his podcast and him having his one of the Carpology articles out on he typed it on his computer in his office. And I remember seeing it and thinking, like, yeah, fair play. Like, that's wicked, isn't it, to be fair, after all those years to go back and, you know what I mean, contribute.
Yeah.
For you, that this point where you move and you're doing your own thing, are you all in? Are you working during this time? Are you managing to get any fishing in? What does life look like?
So is it what's from the point of when we started?
You've left AP, you're starting this new business, you're starting Carpology with Rob. You're all in, basically. Yeah. You're going in to start that. What does life look like at that time?
A lot of fun, like a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but yeah, just like amazing. And as the time progressed, really hard because there was the initial excitement, and then for those sort of 3 or 4 months from when we formed the business, but we hadn't actually launched a magazine.
Okay.
To then when we launched a magazine, the initial reaction was 50-50 at best. Like it was a proper Marmite product. There was a lot of people that thought it was just a work of art, absolutely amazing, to another 50% that thought we were ruining carp fishing and it was the worst thing that had singly ever happened in carp fishing.
Why? Because it was so different.
Just because it was so different. It was so laddish. We had swearing in there at that point. It was just like we just did. It was, if you look at issue 1, it's so different to anything that had ever come. Or been and come since. It was, it was so different. So it certainly made a mark from that. But Loaded magazine, which at that point was, Loaded and FHM were in their prime, and Loaded picked it up and ran a feature on it. And made a point of saying, it's obvious Carpology wants to be a Loaded of carp fishing. So it was really laddish. And then from issue 2, we toned back the swearing straight away. I just said, where Rob is like so thick-skinned, nothing can faze him at all. And I think John's sort of on the same page, where I'm a lot more sensitive, and at that point, a lot younger than him as well. And I remember like Riggs, it was forums at that point, just getting pounded, like absolutely pounded. It was like so upsetting because
like what type of stuff? Like who they're trying to be, what they're doing?
We're just horrible things, just like writing really nasty things. Obviously, they didn't really know who me and Rob and John were, but it was just. It's just obviously upsetting when you've put so much into something and then you have someone just like lots of people just slagging it off, and you just think, it was quite heartbreaking at the time. But as time goes on, it's like anything, you just become thick-skinned to it, and you like now. I am still a lot more sensitive than Rob, but like now it's sort of water off a duck's back. I don't really pay attention to it so much now, but back then it was quite hurtful. And then we sort of made quite a few changes to those early issues because it was so laddish.
But was that influence, the Loaded
and FHM?
That was your influence, wasn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, they were like the what we were sort of trying to do.
I remember that those days.
And then that's where Fitty of the Month came from. In issue 5, we then did Fitty of the Month, which was
you videoed Fitty of the Month as well, didn't you?
That was late. Channel, yeah, we did later on. That was sort of like year 2011, I think, when we did a couple of them. Josh Hillman used to then shoot the Fitty of the Month shoots, and he filmed a couple of them, but. Those early ones, Fitty of the Month was just, it was massive. Like at one stage, it was that's all people talked about. When the magazine arrived, it was like, who's Fitty of the Month? And then I think we did 2, if not 3 calendars on the back of it. And like back then, it was like, advertisers were just like throwing money at it. It was, they'd send over, like we hired, the first one we did two shoots, one in a studio and one on location.
What was the location? Your best shoot show, mate.
And then Tracker was one of the sponsors. They'd send us, it was an armadillo at that point, was there like platinum, but it was like that, bed chairs, like everything, a whole setup. And then there was we then had professional models.
How did you recruit these professional models?
Well, that was for an agency. But the Fitty of the Month originally was just like going to a pub and seeing a pretty bar girl and just saying, do you want to like be Fitty of the Month?
There is no way you went up to a bar girl.
It would have been Rob. I'd have been too 100%. Nervous.
Rob, that one.
Yeah, Rob would have been. He'd have loved it. Well, he did. Where the calendar shoots, and then later Fitty of the Months was sponsored by Eric's Angling. So I remember that. Yeah, they sponsored it, and there's a fishery. I've forgotten what they're called now.
Fishery.
They did it. They got a fish farm as well. They're in Essex. It doesn't matter, but they sponsored it. So it was just huge. It was like a massive, massive thing. And then we dropped that in... I'm trying to think. It really ran its course. Like it got to the point where it just wasn't like something you should be doing in like just in 20.
Yeah, that whole laddie culture.
Something like that, 2014.
Yeah, that whole culture it shifted, didn't it?
Yeah. It just changed, and we just came away from it. It lost, and the feature did lose its impact because as time went on, then we didn't get advertising for it. It run its course. We then started using like stock images, or we used the agency we'd use. We'd just buy the images off them and then just do it. It just wasn't the same. It didn't have the same impact.
I also remember like a load of like the adverts. I'm trying to think like mainline adverts, solar adverts were quite like laddie, weren't they?
Yeah.
Or like, and then there was also ones that were like, I'm pretty sure I saw like Ali Hamidi with a kebab and stuff like that. And you think like nowadays, like you're not getting away with that, are you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cheek, carp angling banter. Unbelievable, mate. What times. But that starting point, so from that first issue, that whole lad culture influence, how things sort of got rolling. Rob, is it fair to say he's sort of more the business side of stuff, was he? How did you guys work?
So initially when John was involved with us, John did the layout. Rob did the ads and like the print production, those sort of things, and I did the editorial. And then Rob was involved in the editorial. Rob was more like the face of the magazine because he could pull ridiculous faces.
Yeah.
So he was at that point a bit of a celebrity. Like we'd go to the shows and everyone would like be around Rob because they just found him really funny because of these ridiculous face expressions he used to pull. So we would sort of work together doing the editorial, taking photographs. I'd write all the content. But then John left on issue 7 was his last issue. Then we got someone in to do issue 8 that contacted Rob as a designer in London. And then Rob sort of he was doing the day-to-day bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think where we then progressed from there. Then I think it was on about issue 9, Carl bought in. He was like bizarrely, he owned a couple of like corner shops, and Rob bought his house off Carl. And when John left, we were like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to fund this? And then Rob said, well, I could speak to this guy. He's got a couple of really successful shops, like convenience shops. Shall I see if he wants to buy into it? And he was just selling those 2 businesses. So he bought into it and he ran the business side of it. So Carl was with us until issue 213, something like that.
Wow. So that's a good old stint then, isn't it?
Not that I've just made those figures up completely. Not that it really matters anyway. He was with us till about issue 124, I think it was.
So he's done 100 plus issues.
Yeah, 100 plus issues, yeah. And then we bought him out, and then he left, and then Rob and I were then just the sole owners on it. I've gone off on a tangent again, haven't I?
No, I love this, mate. No, you crack on. I love the tangents. For you, that business, during that sort of early fledgling time when you're trying to get it off the ground, how did that look? Instant success, straight up there, nice and secure, it's definitely going to work? Or was it a lot more sort of on the edge?
On the edge for a long, long, long time. I remember speaking to our bank manager, and we set up the account, and they asked us a question, what do you think your salary is going to be? And we were like, we'd calculated we were going to earn within the first 6 months 60 grand each. I think Rob had to remortgage. I think he remortgaged once, and then his parents were paying his council tax.
Jeez.
I think we paid ourselves. I was living at home, and I got, I'm going to call it family allowance off my dad, of like 20 quid a week or a month or something, I can't remember. And I think we paid ourselves, if it was more than 3 grand in the first 12 months, it might have even been 18 months. Like, I'd be amazed. Like, it didn't make it. It finally started paying a small salary. I think we were earning about £1,000 a month before tax. When would have been about issue 15, 16. So we're in. No, it would have been later than that, actually, because we did the first, probably like towards issue 24, 25. So when we started to get a regular salary, because before it was just as and when we could take £100 or something. So it was just, very fortunate I was living at home and my outgoings were virtually zero.
Do you think about jacking it in?
No, because I don't think I've ever had that thought. I just loved it. I remember I racked up a huge debt. I had a big overdraft and a flexi loan. But that was like just before the finance, like 2004. So credit was cheap then and freely available. No, not at all. I've had times where I thought this isn't worth it. Like later on when the business was really struggling again. But no, I've just like those early years. If anything, it was the opposite. It was like so exciting. Like I just wanted to be working all the time. Like I was doing 7 days a week from, they were just ridiculous hours. Like I'd be up at 5, 6, sometimes even earlier than that, like later on when we did Maximum Carp, but then work all day and then finish for dinner at 6, half 6, have dinner, and then I'd work again until like 10 o'clock at night and then do the same again the next day. And it was just because I was just so absorbed in it. It was all I wanted to do. Like I sacrificed a lot because I missed out on doing lots of things because all I was doing was working.
What did you sacrifice? What did you miss out
just on like holidays and things like that and going on events and just lots of things like that. You know, nothing major in the grand scheme of life, but there was lots of things that I didn't do because I was just like focused on I had to work or I had that deadline that I had to hit. So it was, but it was for the love of it. Like I loved doing it. It was just, and it's always been like that, to be honest. I've never really lost that. Even we had a really dire period where we launched another magazine called Maximum Carp, which was in May 2011.
What's the thinking behind that then? Because obviously the main magazine's it's built a following, hasn't it? It's
by that point it had. At that point we were doing, things were doing really well. We built up a really big clothing line, like the Carpology hoodie. And it was, I think I always had this thing that I wanted to have 2 magazines and I wanted to, because we were still working from our offices at home.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, I suppose, to be similar to like DHP and Angling Publications. I wanted an office and I wanted to have a team of people. The reality was when that came, I was like, I really wish now I was back in my dad's house in my office there. But that was what I always sort of aspired to have. And in a way, it's a double-edged sword, Maximum Carp was, because in one way, it almost destroyed the company, but in another way, it saved the company further down the line, because when we did it stretched me to breaking point because I was trying to edit 2 magazines. So I had two monthly deadlines. So it was just like insane, like the work involved in it. And you can see the magazine suffered for that.
Yeah,
initially they didn't. But then as time went on, they just got, you're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul with the content. And they did. They just like dropped in quality because you just can't, it's just not possible to do that. And with hindsight, we would have been better off paying a full-time editor to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it was my choice. I was like, no, I want to do it because I really want to do a magazine for, an instructional magazine rather than a Carpology, which was more sort of aspirational, story based. And it got to the point where we had to close it because it wasn't going anywhere. And sorry to answer your question, the thinking behind it was that was the bigger part of the market.
Yeah.
So we thought if we target that, we can take sales off Total and Crafty, mag sales, and then advertising. But the reality was we've looking back at it, that was never going to happen. Like they had such a big foothold in the stores that we were never going to be able to compete with them to get mag sales to then take advertisers to us. So it was, in one way, we lost. Like it was, that really was probably the lowest point of the 20 years of doing the magazine. That we had to make virtually everyone redundant, and it was just like we were virtually down to there was just nothing left really. So it was really hard, and you sort of then every day you're picking yourself up and you're thinking like, is this worth it? Like I just don't know if this is worth it anymore. Yeah. But at the same time, this is worth it because I love doing it. And then the turning point of that was when we bought Carl out, which was in 2014. Rob and I just had a very different direction of how we wanted to take the business. So when Carl left, it was like, right, it's now down to us. We can do what we want to do. And it was at that point we'd started the social media, growing that part of it. We hadn't really got into YouTube, but we'd gone down that route. And then we just sacrificed our salaries again to make the magazine better. So rather than where all the other magazines were making cutbacks because print was in decline at that point.
Course.
Rather than like taking the pagination down, reducing the paper quality, we were like, right, we're going to do the complete opposite. We'll make ours bigger.
Get some of that down your boy.
We'll make ours make the pagination bigger. We'll have spot colours. We'll do We'll do like multiple cover shots for the magazines. We'll invest in better design, better fonts, and we just did everything. So we then sort of sacrificed taking putting more back into it and taking less, although there wasn't really a lot there because we were on our knees really at that point. But we just then slowly started reinvesting. Yeah, within 6 months, we'd seen the tides change. We'd gone from this sort of inner circle, everything just getting darker and darker, and couldn't see the wood for the trees, and then it started going that way. And the big points there came from Maximum Carp, because we'd created 33 issues of this magazine that was it was brilliant content. It really was amazing content, lovely illustration. Lots of ideal for website content. So it was all 200 to 500 words, lots of illustrations, nice step by steps, but not the masses had never seen it because it hadn't gone out to enough people. So at that point we invested in a new website that mimicked the magazine. We had all our typefaces pulled through on it. We had it. It was fully responsive, which was a sort of a big thing back then in 2014. A lot of websites still weren't completely mobile friendly, and it was designed for editorial. That was the purpose of it. So we then took this amazing content that we had from Maximum Carp, put it on the website, which then shared it through, at that point, more Facebook than Instagram, and the likes it was just rocketing. It was just incredible how quickly it was going up. You were just doing, thousands a day is an exaggeration, but thousands a week. It was just going up so quickly. And then consequently with that, our website views went from about 1,800 a month unique visits to within a year, maybe 18 months, we're doing 100,000 uniques a month. Yeah. So it was just and then that became very appealing to advertisers to do social posts and web content. So the web content then, do you remember BuzzFeed?
Yes.
So the lists, do you remember the lists they did? That was something that we sort of latched onto. I said this could be a really good idea, that it's very shareable content. So we then went to say Dower when they relaunched their the tournament, and they did a tournament black. So we did, and it was in. So the tournament first launched in 1995, and this would have been 2015, and so we did 30 differences between 1995 and 2015. So it was a picture of Terry Hearn in 95 with big curtains, and a picture of Gaz Fairham with an enormous beard. And then it was all the different things, how things have changed in that period. But that was so shareable because people related to it.
Yeah, of course.
So Dower loved that. And then that's where that side of the business then progressed and grew rapidly, because we were then creating content of that ilk for that was sort of advertorially, but it was shareable content, and then it just had a message at the bottom saying all these things have changed, but one thing that hasn't changed is the Dower tournament 5000T.
That point's clearly pivotal, and it's a point that I've talked to a lot of other people who've started with the likes of DHP, Angling Publications, and they've been not critical, but they've said that has been the moment around that time frame where social media kicked in. People didn't make that sort of digital switch. The advertising dropped off, and we've seen the unfortunate sort of demise of other titles because of the fact that there's not enough there to sort of keep it buoyant. Before that, before we go into this switch and where things picked up, you're fishing in amongst all this time.
Yeah.
Is there any?
Yeah. Back then, bizarrely, even though I said I was doing all that working, I did still go fishing more than I go now. We did a lot of French trips because, again, at that point, a lot of those French fisheries were still advertising in print, and to make their ad stand out, they would often say to us, "We'll pay for you all exclusive to come over and fish our lake and then do a write up on it." So I was sort of doing 3 to 5 of those a year. Not always like a full week. It was sort of 3-4 days. So I was doing those.
Where'd you go?
To be all the sort of the commercial places,
like around there.
Yeah, no, we went to Lequy recently. Actually, but we didn't back then.
Right.
Nash's place he had at the time. Cavagnac was one of them. Tang de Soleil, Eden's Lakes. What other ones? A lot of the lakes you'll still hear about today. We went to Crystal Waters. That was one.
Dream Lakes, you do that? Was that
no, never been to. Oddly enough, the two like longest standing French commercial fisheries, Dream Lakes and Lequy, we'd never been to either of them until last month. We went to Lequy to make a video.
Dream Lakes next.
Yeah, so up and we've never been there. So hopefully
caught a few. Enjoyed that.
Yeah,
sort of
loved it. Yeah, like really enjoyed that. That was they were always really good fun. Really enjoyed those trips.
What was life like on the road with Mr. Bell?
Yeah, always entertaining. To be honest, a lot of those trips, actually, Rob came on a few of them. I used to go with Angus quite a lot. He used to do like bits and pieces for us. So yeah, he came on them, and then my mate Dave, he'd come along on them, and they were just always really good fun. Like I do love going to France. There's that sort of element of it's like a bit of a jolly. And like a road trip and the build up to it, particularly now. Like now, the trips I get so excited about going.
Yeah,
like the prep and the organisation. That part of it is just as exciting as the actual getting there and going fishing. But yeah, they were brilliant. I really enjoyed them.
What's the French PB, mate? What's it at?
We were discussing this the other day. Rob and I are useless at remembering. I think because we have he holds the UK Carpology record, which is from here, actually. It was the 4x4.
Yeah, the 4x4 out of here, Rob.
I think it was 47. He had the cover shot as well, because Mick Rouse, who was working for Angling Times at the time, he was here with us. Kevin invited us down, and Rob had, the 4x4, and then Mick came over and said, do you want me to take some, because we were using like a Canon. It was one of those really early ones that everyone had with a kit lens, like an 18 to a 55. It was awful. And Mick saw it. He was like, do you want me to take some of my camera? I was like, yeah, if you don't mind. And he took some shots. And then Rob had, we then put it on the cover. And that issue is one of the biggest selling issues, which he claims was because obviously he's on the front.
Cover
but
shot.
It wasn't. It was a lovely cover shot. It's because it had a free Nashy mutant hook baits. What mutant hook baits did you do?
Yes.
Yeah. So it had like a £5 cover mount strapped on the front of it. So that's the reason why it's because then when I went on the cover, which is only once as well, Rob's been on it once, and I've been on it
What
once.
was your cover?
I was issue 33.
As if you know that as well. You do a photographic on every issue.
Yeah, on the
you?
issues I have. It's quite geeky. It's not as good now since I've had children. And then I followed Wendy Lithgow. She was on.
Yes.
No, I've got that wrong. It isn't issue 33. Liam Bartrop was issue 33. Wendy Lithgow was.
You could say any number, mate.
You could check. That's because I was just thinking. So I'm like, they're not going to check. They won't be that geeky. But I just realised it wasn't that one. It was. Now I'm thrown because it was followed Wendy Lithgow. Wendy Lithgow was on the front with Nige, which I think was issue. It really doesn't matter, does it?
In the 30s somewhere.
I think it was late 20s.
Late 20s.
I think I was 29. I don't know.
What fish was it?
So I had Nigel's fish from Sandhurst.
Oh, from Sandhurst. Oh, wow.
But Wendy and Nigel were on the issue before, and it had a free cover mount with Nigel's boilie. Do you remember he did a boilie with Bait Tech?
Yeah.
And so again, the sales spiked. I was the issue after, so they dropped right back down. So, but on Rob's, he had a cover mount, so he always lays claim that.
You should have held back that freebie, boy.
Well, yeah, I didn't really think
test.
about it at that point. It was only afterwards when he went on the cover.
How'd you catch Niges?
So that was in.
Was it winter maggot fishing job or not?
No, it was in the summer. It was with Dave. Do you remember Dave Benton? Like mega day to get angler. He ended up doing quite a big series in Crafty Carper, but Nige put him onto us and said this guy is like amazing, particularly at the time he was on Sandhurst fishing maggots in the summer.
Yeah.
And I went, he was in the pipes, and I was the one round that goes in, fishes the sort of the bay, and you've got the island. I forgot what it's called.
I know you mean.
From then it was on maggots. I had a really good trip, actually. I did catch quite a few that trip.
You on maggot clips, or what you on? Or just...
I'll be honest, I can't remember how to sound now. I just remember they were maggots.
Got that many big ones, you know what I mean?
know.
Just another one.
Certainly not that way. No, it's just my memory's awful now. But that was...
that's cool.
That was, I forgot what your original question was now. Oh, PBs. So yeah, Rob's got the 47 4x4, and mine is the European, which I think was on Rainbow. I think it's like 59 something. It was just shy of 60.
Rainbow. Now that is a trip, mate.
Yeah,
that's a belter.
That was amazing. Lockie sorted that for us. That was in 2011.
What are you saying about that?
2012.
You've got too many dates and issue numbers going in your head there, mate.
So yeah, it was amazing. We fished. I think it was Peg 11. It's one of the easier swims. It's almost like a canal. You've got a long island that runs. It almost doesn't look like an island. It looks just like a far bank. I think it's 11. I think Lockie was in 12. I'd love to go back. I'd love to go back. We had a good trip.
£59, you can't turn your nose up.
No, and we had some good mishaps. Rob on the first, we'd just set up, and I'd got one rod out, and Rob had the boat out, and a 66-pound thrust outboard, and he's drifting. He lifted up the outboard, I think, and as he's gone over my rod, and obviously your rods are up really high. Tips bent over, all locked up, 50-pound braid or whatever it is, and I was in the bivvy doing something. And it's just bleep. You only get one bleep once. And I thought, my initial reaction was I can't believe I got a bite already. It's only been out there 20 minutes. I've looked. Obviously, at this point, Rob's put the motor down, turned it, 66 pounds of thrust. The rod has just gone float straight out. It's broken the lock for the
to keep your rod down.
Smashed into my Foxy alarm. Smashed the front of my Bazier off. Smashed the hanger, and it broke the reed switch. And it's just got like powered in. Rob's just sat there, looked at me, and just put his head down. It's like, fucking hell. So I couldn't believe it. They'd been there 20 minutes. So after that we didn't have any more. Well, I did have one more take where the rod, I almost caught it mid-air, like the bank stick. Bearing in mind you're putting them in like this far, was bent like that, and I unfortunately lost it. It was in savage take, absolutely savage.
Some place, mate. It looks.
I'd definitely love to go back because it is just an amazing place to fish. When you've got that many big fish, it's proper exciting.
The other thing this time, you've obviously got a lot of advertisement. You've got a lot of people that you've got relationships with. One of the perks got to be tackle, mate. If you're rocking some Baziers, they've come across from Daiwa to do a review and not gone back, haven't they? This definitely happened in my time, mate. We got some kit and we were like, oh, these would be all right. Do you know what I mean? And they'd be like, I need them back in the office. They definitely ain't gone back to Daiwa, mate.
Nowadays, it's not as sort of free for all as it was. In the early years, when we first launched the magazine, Dynamite was just ridiculous. I always remember Dynamite with just Larry, who worked there at that point. And this is when they probably still are doing really well now, but then they were emerging as this Real Madrid lineup of consultants. Ridiculous, they had Terry, Nick, Frank. It was just an incredible lineup. And Larry, who worked there, was almost sort of treating Carpology as if we're a retail store, but we don't have to pay for any bait. He would just phone and goes, what do you need this week? And initially, obviously, you're all excited. You go, can I have this, 10 kilos of this pellets and 10 kilos of this? And then after a while, you're like, well, you've just been greedy. So then, obviously, we didn't. We stopped taking it. But
when you stop selling it out your car boot, Waverney Valley Lakes, lads, get your pellets.
And then with tackle, again, tackle was the same. But Rob's worse than me. I particularly now, I don't really ever. I've got everything I need. I've got a nice set of reels, a nice set of rods, and I don't wear. It's just
you take the mickey.
No.
I suppose your relationship is not going to last that long if you've got through 12 sets of bases.
Well, exactly. It's I always feel like that's costing a company money, so I've got to do something in return to justify it. So I would always. Anything now, it's always I'll review it, and if it's a big product, we'll do a video review because of the reach. Now it's nowhere near as extravagant as it used to be.
There was definitely a period, mate. I remember in those early. To be fair, Kev Knight, I was going to France and didn't have any boilie, and within 24 hours, he dropped off 100 kilo to me and didn't charge me. And I was like, "What in the world?" And I'm still no one, but I was definitely no one then. Do you know what I mean? It was mental at a time like that. I remember speaking to guys at DHP and that, and they were the same because it was just that culture for advertisers were getting products over. You were getting the numbers. It was the medium to get it out there, and it paid for it paid for itself once it got some coverage.
Yeah,
crazy times. You said there was a pivotal moment, a pivotal switch where things went sort of more digital, social media based for you guys, and that very much sort of started a bit of an upturn in terms of the fortune for the magazine. Until then, you're scraping by, but you're never giving up. And much in the way that you spoke about it earlier about your passion for doing it, like a carp angler on a campaign will have that passion to go through all the horrible sort of blanks, inactivity, not being close to it, seeing it caught by somebody else, whatever. They'll play for it. You've done the same thing with regards to that. There's definitely a parallel with sort of being single-minded in terms of what you want. When you get that upturn and things start turning up, how does that change in terms of your decision-making for that business? It seems like a constant reassess. Obviously, you've managed to get you and Rob at the helm making the decisions, buying out your partner. How does that change in terms of the magazine itself when things start to go digital? Was there any thought of just going, I'll tell you what, mate, sack this magazine off, we'll just do the digital side of stuff and that'll make more sense?
Initially, there was with Maximum Carp, before we closed it, there was a point of where we were experimenting, doing lots different with a website, doing because again, that sort of period, iPads were becoming more and more popular, and a lot of big publishers were experimenting with doing really interactive magazines designed bespokely for iPads, and we sent our designer on a course to do that. But it was Lewis Porter from Fox Lewis. Just said, like, it's just pointless. Like, you may as well put it out to as many people as you can on a website that anyone can access. If you haven't got an iPad or you don't know, you've got to download the app, you're not going to see that content, regardless of how amazing it is. So we then, we just went away from that idea. With Carpology, no, not particularly with when things started to improve, the magazine sales then, against everyone else was declining. We were growing and growing quite significantly in the ground, in carp fishing terms.
What do you put that down to? The format, the features you had in there, the people you had in there, or the fact that the digital side had opened sort of the reach and the eyes of more people to it? I've
got no scientific data to back it up, but I would say it's more. It was more the magazine on its own, like promoting it to a bigger audience. Sure, probably would have got a few more people to pick it up and make them aware of the new issue. But I definitely feel like it was more the quality of the magazine at that point. So this would have been 2015, around that sort of period, 16, 17. You had, like, I look back through it and it was amazing. Not only did it look really beautiful, you had Terry Hearn in there doing a diary, you had Terry Hearn doing a rotary letter extension when that finished. You had Gaz Farron writing his series called This Is Nowhere, Daryl Peck doing No Bullshit, Just Good Solid Angling, Rob Hughes doing Below the Surface. It was like an amazing lineup of this great eclectic mix of content and you were also, I think, opening the magazine up to more people. Like Gaz was a good example, that when he came on board, his influence with that, like the Carpy crew, that what he's created with Sub, were, I've got no data, but I feel like they bought into the magazine at that period. So that's where we were getting growth from that younger audience, as well as the existing audience we already had. So
did he definitely guest edit one as well?
Yeah, so he
only other guest.
He did one in, I think it was 2018.
It must have been quite a lot later on.
Because and then Alan was going to do a guest edit, but it just never happened. But Alan was one of the covers of Gaz's guest edit, so it was an amazing cover shot. Gaz wanted to do two covers. One was a scenic, beautiful, big European lake sunset with a boat, and the other one was Alan.
Was that the cap makeup one?
Yeah, Dan shot it, and he was one of the lakes out here was sort of just up to his nose, looking directly into the camera, and that was a great shot. Like I would have liked it on all the covers, because I think collectively it would have got more sales because of it. That was so striking. It was, whilst the scene, it was lovely, but like Alan doing that is so different. yeah, so Gaz doing a guest edit was a really, really good thing. I really enjoyed that.
Features wise, for you, what things? I mean, that rotary letter was brilliant. I love that the way that sort of, you know what I mean, carried on. I often thought about doing that as a podcast and talking about things and people carrying on. But you know what I mean? That sort of whole thing and getting other people's opinions in or whatever on certain things. What things are really like, I don't know, because you see so many of them. For us, like for me, when I was reading the magazine, everything was influential. There was loads of stuff like a real, as you said, a real good mix, if you like, of people, significant people, but also like styles of angling. And the way that it was sort of formatted wasn't, I think it was a very hard magazine to like pigeonhole. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm putting that across right, but some magazines you knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
You would get a rig, you'd get some bait, you would get probably no story-based stuff. You'd get story-based stuff, but you would also, within that, get some elements of technical stuff. There'd be a lot in there, I think, and there still is to this day. Like, there's a lot of variance in there. Predominantly story-based, but a lot of variance. For you, those features, anything really sort of, I don't know, anything really sort of stand out or sort of, I don't know, you look back at and think, oh my God, that was a mega series.
Definitely no bullshit, just good solid angling. That was like a mantra from Regan. That was what he used to always just say about particular anglers that he knew, that, you know, just no bullshit to it. It's just decent solid angling. And so I pitched that to Daryl Peck. He was the first one to do it. And it was just brilliant. Like, he did 4 or 5 parts, I think, and then a couple later on as one-offs. But that's been done by so many people. Gaz did it, Jimmy Armstrong, Oz Holness, and it's just the format is that you look at a particular red letter session or a particular campaign for a particular fish, and then breaking it down into 5 or 6 elements of what led to it. So it could be a particular sighting that led to it, and then a change in a rig, and it's like a campaign in nugget size formats, like the real key moments, and that's always proved really, really popular. I suppose anything by Gaz, anything by Terry, you know, when I get like Terry's diary, particularly when that came through, that was always like so, you know, exciting, because you get 10 beautiful images and then great text, and you just know everyone's going to love it, and then it's just down to us to make it look really pretty in the magazine and lay it out in the best way for what the diary is about.
What are you doing numbers wise at its peak?
So I think we dropped wholesale. We probably dropped to probably down to about 3,000 or 4,000.
Jesus.
And then with subscribers, probably 1,600 at that point, where when we got back to its peak, probably like getting towards 10s, 11s, something like that. So it did jump up quite significantly. And this is in a period, like, we've never been a total carp. Like, we've never been, total carp was 20, you know, 20,000. Same with the other ones, you know, Carp World's probably its peak, 16, 17, Crafty. But when we came in, was sort of the print side of things was still going, but it was getting like, it was the legs were starting to run out. It was you know, we were at the latter stage of that growth, so we were never going to go above like 10,000. Was always like if we can get, you know, initially we thought we'd do far more than that, but obviously after a few we then realised that actually this is what our target is. So you know, it was quite significant shift upwards when all the others were closing or dropping dramatically. So yeah, it was.
What was dealing with because obviously, like, deadlines are there for everything, but you're in the same way. I think, like with the podcast, you're at the mercy sometimes of guests. Things happen on shoots, things happen on features. They might not come out. Somebody might have something go on. They can't get the wording over to you. You've got to produce that magazine. Yeah, I'm guessing there's been quite a few times where you've been pretty close to that deadline wire to go to print, mate.
Yeah,
and you've been, frantically panicking to get something together because you got to sign it off and you got to send it.
Yeah.
What situations have been sort of particularly hairy in that front, mate?
The worst one I remember is Rob Hughes. I love Rob to bits, and but
smash him now.
He can be a nightmare with deadlines. And he was doing a below the surface, and he went over to Abbey Lakes, and I've been chasing because the deadline had gone. I was like, Rob, I need it. It was getting closer and closer, and we went to print on the Sunday. And on the Saturday, it was my birthday, and I was going out that evening with friends, and And I was chasing. I was like, Nick, this during the day, chasing him. Yeah, I'll get it over. And in the end, I had to cancel the party. And I was furious. I think he was as pissed off with me because I was getting so irate with him on the phone. And then in the end, so I had to cancel the party. And then I finally he did get it over to me. I think he was saying it was like a storm or something. He was having a nightmare sending it, basically.
Right.
And then he finally did get it over. But that's the worst. I remember that because then I had to get it. Well, I don't think I did anything to it. I think it was almost like it came in and I just sent it to Dan, the designer at the time. I said, like, you've got to, because it had to go to print the next, Sunday evening, but we had to do repro. Repro always took like a full day. Yeah. So he had to do it overnight for me to turn up Sunday morning to then do it. So yeah, I remember I was pretty wound up over that. That's the worst I remember.
You like sending things to print when you've not quite checked them though, aren't you?
I don't.
We were talking about this in the office with a certain Mr. Lennon.
I honestly don't know how that happened.
That's about what issue's that? You'll know that issue.
No, we're in children territory then. So
are we?
Yeah,
Post-children.
Yeah. It wasn't that long ago, actually. Probably 12 months ago. Certainly within the last 12 months.
Henry sent a series of images through to you, hasn't he? Yeah. A load of images. You've gone, I quite like these ones. Could you send me some captions for them? What was his caption on this photo?
I'm not going to deliver it very well because I can't remember, but it's something along the lines of, do not use this picture. I wasn't meant to be night fishing or something.
And instead of rewording the caption, it's just gone straight to print.
I just put it straight in. I just copied and pasted it. I honestly don't know how I did that.
That's
yeah. That's the sort of thing I just wouldn't miss. But I did miss.
I was going to say pretty meticulous.
Yeah, I could when Henry messaged me, he was like, "Why have you put this in?" I was like, "Shit."
I think it even had your name in it, didn't it? Didn't it say something like, "Joe, do not put this in. I wasn't meant to be fishing here." And you've just gone word for word.
Just copied and pasted it. Yeah. It was. Luckily, no one said anything. I didn't have anyone email in about it.
It's Henry. Has he ever fished anywhere he's going to fish? Do you know what I mean? Like, sets the bar pretty low. For you, the sort of meticulous nature of that over a period of 20 years. Any other clangers? There can't be many. I've not known any. You are on it, man.
No, yeah. There's been none that are. There's obviously lots of mistakes, but there's been nothing that that's been. The only thing I remember, we nearly got sued. I don't know how far it would have gone. When, again, it was around that sort of 2011 when predation was like a big topic. And I remember the Rotary letter, a lot of people were talking about it, and there was a video of an otter. I think it grabbed a heron or something like that. And I think someone had, I can't remember how the story went, but I took a screenshot. Like they wanted this particular image of this otter holding this heron with their article, and I screenshotted it off this video that was on YouTube. And I have no idea how the person who owned this video found out, but I just got an email said, "This is my copyright. You've screenshotted it. I'm going to take you to court. You weren't allowed. You didn't get my permission." So Husey, like I say, loving it a bit. So I then messaged him and said, "Rob, help," because he's always like my go-to whenever there's like an issue that I might get sued. Rob's always there, being an ex-solicitor, and he said, "Did you take a picture of it, like with your camera of the screen?" I was like, "No, I screenshot." He went, "Oh, you could have got around it. Apparently, if it was a photograph, it would have been okay." But he just sent one back. So he wrote me this in legal jargon and basically said, "We'll pay you £50." Well, he said he said just to get rid of him. He said he probably hasn't got a leg to stand up. If you don't want the ag, just say we'll give you £50 for it. So I just wrote back and said we're happy to agree to £50, which he came back and said, "Yeah, I'll do that," and that was it. So that's the only thing I ever remember. There was one other in the early issues where we wrote something about someone that didn't like it, and we had to write an apology. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to drag it all back up again.
Oh, Joe, you can't leave me. Tell me off camera.
I'll tell you off camera. That. Yeah.
You so what in the next issue?
It was like a really. It was
like retraction.
Yeah, it was a John Hannant one. He was John always wrote the captions. He was so funny, so witty. And yeah, he wrote this again. It was a screenshot, and he wrote the caption too. It was really funny. But it upset the person, so yeah.
Where's your influence come from all this? Is it pretty organic in terms of like you, the representation of the scene, the key figures, or because obviously early days there was the Lagmat sort of influence.
Yeah.
Later on, the digital shift, that whole thing. You're obviously quite perceptive, and opportunities have sort of arisen, whether that be through timing, whether that be through sort of just acumen and sort of a business sense of where things were going. You've made a good decision with all that. But the actual magazine itself, to stay relevant, to stay having an audience and picking up at times where things in print are dropping off and everybody's looking at their phones and tablets rather than that whole thing, that is a key talent in the longevity of that magazine. What influences are you drawing from?
I'm trying to think where the influence. I suppose the overall influence it's not from one particular person. I suppose it's just about it being like a really high quality, making it as good as it can be. Because particularly in a time where, like you said, everyone's looking at their phone, it's trying to give them something they can't get off their phone, and that's always been. Particularly since we had this like relaunch in 2014 when we bought Carl out and things sort of took a turn for the better. That was when, it was just particularly that time it was all about making it as good as it can be. I think that's from a personal level because everything I want it to be as good as it can be. So I am sort of proud of it. But then that obviously reflects in sales because hopefully if it is as good as it can be, people will then want to buy it and will pay their hard-earned money for something that we've produced because they enjoy it. So I suppose the influence is just around just trying to make something as good as it can possibly be and making it that hopefully they won't be able to find that online. Basically,
you were always. I remember a meeting I had with you down at Bungie, mate, when I came to the old HQ, and you were always looking at sources. This was digitally, so this isn't written word necessarily, but you were looking at sources that were sort of, as everybody does, I think nowadays, but back then that were sort of on the internet, very popular. People were looking at. I can't remember what it was. HelloFresh. I can't remember what you were looking at for porterology fixes. What was it? It was a cooking show,
Tasty.
Tasty.
Yeah, sorry. So I suppose in that respect,
you were always looking at stuff
like influence from the digital side of things. Yeah. It's just everything. So I would just like Tasty. We took that concept and we used it what we call our ology fixes. So it was film from above, time lapse, speeded up, all different types of edits. And they were like so popular. Like we produced two books on the back of it. They've sold like 10,000 copies each. They were mega popular. But that was just that all I used to do in those around that sort of time. Same with website articles, BuzzFeed. I would just look at what trends what was trending that was far bigger and could be done far better than we could ever do outside of fishing, and then just taking that concept and making it relate to us, and then. Where everyone did it. I think Nash did those types of videos. Corda have done them. I think everyone did it. It wasn't our idea. We just saw it and went, right, let's do that. And Porter was the first one to do it for us.
Good old
Porter. He was the And I remember when he was doing them, he used to have a nightmare with it because he used to have a mirror to film it so he could see his hands. And I remember when he left, he told me how to do it. He came to the office and we set up like a studio for it, and he set this mirror up. I said, "This is ridiculous, Lewis." And he sort of looked at me like so big. He's like, "I know. I've been saying for a long time." I was like, "There must be an easier way." And then we went up to Wex, this camera shop.
Yes.
And and they do this mount that you put your iPad in and it just mimics what you're seeing. And I was like, "This is so easy." Just holding
That's classic Porter, though, isn't it?
Well, I think he was more pissed at me because he had been saying. This is like, and I was because he worked from home. I didn't really see the setup, so I just sort of always brushed it off as like, oh, it won't be that bad. And then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, you're right, it's ridiculous.
He was still churning them out though, weren't he? That's the thing.
Yeah. Oh, he was brilliant. Lewis was. Yeah.
What a boy, mate. How did the Lewis Porter? Because that's coincides with the digital.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Was he the first person to sort of come on as a?
Well,
Abby came.
Yeah, Abby was first. Yeah. So Abby was our social media editor, and Abby is engaged to Lewis Porter, but Lewis Porter from Fox, not Lewis Porter
from Corda.
From Corda. Abby worked for Angling Times at Bauer, and Lewis just said, because we said it's starting to expand quite rapidly now. And Lewis said, "Why don't you? Abby might be interested in coming over." And Rob and I were really nervous because we'd only a year and a half before we'd had to lay everyone off. So at this point, it was only like me, Rob, Lou, and Ian. And so we were a bit apprehensive about taking someone on because we just didn't want to take someone on and then have to make them redundant if it didn't work out. So it took a while before we just, we took the jump. And then Abby came on and she was brilliant. It worked really, really well. And then we realised we needed a videographer. And John Kneebone, who works for Mainline, he was doing, because John did work for us when we did Maximum Carp, but then when we closed it, we had to let him go, unfortunately. He went to work with Kev full time. But then we came to an agreement that John could then do 2 day, I think it was 8 days a month. So he was doing a lot of photography, but the odd video, because we were just getting into video.
Yeah.
Then we knew we had to go make the jump and we needed a full-time videographer. So we said to John, we know you can't because we know Kev's going to want to keep you, but do you want to come over full-time or stay with Kev? And he said, well, no, I'm going to have to stay with Kev. So then we put an advert out, and Lewis Porter, again from Fox, recommended Lewis Porter, now from Corda. And then, Lewis was just brilliant. Like he turned up for his interview. He'd gone out. He'd got Jim Foster involved. Jim is like a hero in carp fishing in publishing. He was like one of the early ones with edited Total and Advanced Carp. Lewis knew him quite well, I think, and he helped him do his CV and helped him write an article, and he shot a film when he went out. So he turned up with these, which I wasn't expecting any of it. So it was sort of, you've definitely got the job. Like you're so good. Like you've gone way beyond the expectations of what was required. But I think that's just an insight to Lewis. That's what he is. His work ethic is just, he's just brilliant. And
he's mad.
And then it was sadly he was only with us for, I don't think 6-8 months. I don't think it was a year. And then Alan poached him. And
good poach.
And he phoned us up. I remember, I think he was almost in tears. He phoned me and said, "I'm really sorry, but Alan's, he's offered me quite a bit more money, a car, an allowance for camera equipment." And it was just like nothing we could do. And we were like, okay, obviously gutted to see you go. And then, but it's like anything, like one door closes, another one opens. And it was like, I was pleased to see Lewis go because he was really, in terms of going to Nash, he seemed like he was really excited about it. But then on the back of that, Lewis Porter again at Fox, owe him a lot. He then recommended Curly Joe Wall-Taunton. Because Joe had applied. I think Joe applied for the job that Lewis applied for at that stage.
Had he?
I might be getting things muddled up now, but I think he had. But almost, to be honest, no one else really got a look in. Like Lewis had got it before we'd even done anything else because he'd just gone so far, and the recommendations he'd had, it was like, well, it's a no-brainer. But then Lewis Porter then said, like, Joe looks really good. So we watched his show reel, and then Joe came up and we had an interview with me, Joe, and Rob. And again, we were just sort of bowled over by his enthusiasm, what he could do. Like he was just great. And it was just so lovely how excited he was. Like I can remember, when we left him, we went out for a bite to eat after the interview, and he went back and he was staying in a local B&B because we're in Norfolk, and he'd driven up from
Bristol, the West Country, isn't it?
Yeah, so he stayed over that night, and I think he messaged us both and just said, I can't thank you enough. I'm like so excited, and then he put up on his Facebook page just like dream come true, and it was just so lovely to see that enthusiasm. It was almost like we've definitely made the right decision, like taking you on, and he's still with us, and he's sort of like part of the family. He's brilliant.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's a few years there, Joe.
We said 5-6 years, something like that, and then we've had. So I'm trying to think who came next. Then I think Joe's still with us. Then we had Dan. Dan Whitford was with us for a bit, and then he for about 6 months, 12 months, something like that. And then when he left, we then had, I think Luke came on board. Yeah, that's when Luke came on board. Yeah. And he was like, Luke had been liaising. We've been liaising together for ages. He'd been submitting a few bits for the magazine. And then it was really strong. We put a job advert out because at this point it was really ramping up, and we needed another videographer. And Luke was one of 4 that were really, really strong, and we managed to get it down to 2. And I don't know if it was split. I think it sort of, I was definitely on Luke's side. I was like, I really want Luke. And then, I think we all sort of all agreed on it. And again, He's been brilliant. Then we took Phoebe on when Abby left. Phoebe's been brilliant, like great. She does all the social media and the website. And then most recent was Ian. And
so realistically, mate, you've not had a lot, have you? You've had good ones.
Yeah, real good ones, yeah. And like the lineup now, like with the videography team, I sort of like, it's a shame because I don't think it will come to fruition how much I want it to. But my sort of goal of what I had when we were starting to get, like when Luke came on and then Ian, was I wanted it to be like Top Gear, because it was like you had Joe being this Clarkson character, and then you had Luke being, who's the short guy? Hammond, and then not saying Ian's May, but like you had then Ian played this like James May character. And when they did the comparison test, where they go out and test like all the reels under £100, there's just good banter between them, and I felt like they could put together a monthly show of pulling the best bits, and they could have a bit where they sit in a studio like this, discuss the news and things like that. But I don't know whether it'll happen now or not, but that was what my sort of vision of what I wanted it to get to. I think that would have worked really well, because they all work, they all get on well, and they work really well.
Jeez, mate. Yeah, I didn't. When you put it down in like a timeline, that's crazy, isn't it? Because realistically, that's quite recent, isn't it? That's all happened.
Yeah. Well, from it's odd, really, as well. I suppose it's just a sign of the times. Pre sort of 2014, everyone that we hired was for the magazine. It was for print.
Yeah.
Where now we haven't hired anyone for print. Well, the only person is Mark Brewster, who is our sub-editor, who is amazing. He's the hire that we've had print related. Everything else has been either digital with Phoebe or videography. So it's just a sign of the times, really, isn't it? But I will still see that the magazine is, whilst the reach of it is the smallest out of every service we offer and create content for, it's, in my mind, it's still the premium flagship product. It's the tangible thing that has the most amount of love and care that goes into it. It's probably is the longest thing it takes to make.
It's just your baby, mate, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah.
100%. You can see that, like, even back when it was your photographic memory of every issue, pretty much, and what's gone into each of them, and the fact that you can recall them just shows how much how much that sort of resonated with regards to you. Recent times, we're coming up to sort of now. Obviously, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but things have changed with regards to you, the mag, and it actually being sold on, mate.
Yeah.
Like, you've gone from scraping around and it being quite difficult, peaks and troughs, really growing when that digital kick came in, maintaining in a situation where climate, COVID, everything else is carnage, to a point where you've actually sold it on and done really well off it, which is completely fair play to you. How do you feel about that whole process? We talked about it being your baby. We talked about all that. How did that? I don't know. If I'm honest, I couldn't imagine you doing it. I couldn't imagine you selling it on.
I think I don't think we ever really had like an exit plan. There wasn't ever anything like that. I remember Rob and I may have had conversations about, because he's 10 years older than me. So it was like, what are you going to do when you get to a certain age and you want to retire? How's that going to work? But it never really went further than that. And the only other very, very minor talks we had with someone buying it was Angling Direct. One stage, and I don't even know if it would have ever gone anywhere. It was just like a brief conversation with Stuart and Darren, and it never really went any further than that. So, and that was quite a few years before. This would have been sort of like 2018, 2019 when those conversations. But then nothing else came of it. And then out of the blue, we just had a letter from this guy Steve Wright, who's the CEO of this publishing company, that specializes in specialist titles. That it's like a big company, and they buy up smaller publishing type companies and then are under one roof. He just inquired if we'd be interested in selling. And I said to Rob, well, it probably is not going to offer what we want, but email him, you may as well. And then, he emailed, and I think Steve called him, and he said, I just need like accounts and things like this, so I can then come up with a valuation. And the valuation was significantly higher than I thought he was going to offer. And I just said to Rob, I said, it's a bit of a no-brainer because it's like, it's a quite a large amount of money up front. It's us ongoing, still doing our job roles within the business, but we won't have the responsibility of running the business. I'll just edit the magazine. Rob will do the print, the ad sales, and it's hopefully the ship will be a bit safer because it's under a bigger umbrella. And then that process went on back and forth, like negotiating the deal, and then just us as employees, our sort of package, if you like. And then had multiple meetings, went and met Steve and Oz, who was ultimately our publisher, so our boss, a meeting in London, and then a couple other small other meetings. And then we then said, we'll go for it. And I think the whole due diligence part of it and the actual transaction was about 3 months. It was quite straightforward. Steve is very, very laid back in terms of the legal side of it, which made it a lot easier. He sort of has bought and sold so many companies. He knew what he's looking for in the accounts. So it was quite straightforward. And it's almost, we sold it the 31st. Is there 31 days in July?
Maybe
30. It's the last day of July anyway, of 2022. So it'd be almost a year ago next week that we sold it. So it's gone incredibly quickly.
Mate, that is an incredible story, mate. Like, can you? I mean, the numbers would be amazing. Like, how many issues, how many views, how many subscribers? When you come into all that, you can't tangibly measure the influence that magazine has had. And it has had an incredible amount of influence for people like Terry to write in it, for people like Gaz to be involved and edit it, for people like Al, for people. It's seen the course of carp fishing and still continues to do so on its YouTube channel as well as in print. To then give that, I don't know, responsibility is not the right word because you're still there doing it, but to give that sort of ownership away, what does that feel like personally for you? Does it feel bittersweet, or does it feel good in the sense that you've obviously now your situation's changed, you've got a family, you've got a couple of little ones, you don't really want to be scraping around, have another dip when things turn and it gets super saturated as media is becoming.
Yeah.
Like, what goes through your head with that? Is it more bitter than it is sweet with regards to that? Are you happier with that?
I think I'd say I'm happier. It's been a bit. It's been quite tough the last 12 months. The transition going into their business. Not, I'd say more so on the rest of the team, to be honest. That's the sort of the bittersweet, because from mine and Rob's perspective, we've come out of it with something where obviously the other guys haven't, and they've had to put up with the changes that have been implemented, and we feel like we are starting to get, they've been integrated into a much bigger company. Us before, it was 10 of us, and we could just do when we wanted to do it. If something needed to be paid, we'd pay it straight away. If someone needed something, we'd support it straight away. Where when you're going into a big corporate company, we didn't have an HR. They've got all of those things. We didn't have any of that. If there was a problem, it was like, we'll sort of speak to Rob. It was, it was where now, it's just like, expenses, things like that are just way more complicated than what they used to be. So I think it's just taken time for everyone to adjust to that. But in terms of handing it over to someone else, I don't think so. It's odd because a lot of people have thought that. Nigel said to me the other day when I went down to do a feature, he introduced me to the bailiff, and he said, "Oh, this is Joe. He used to own Carpology, sold it." And they said, then Nigel then continued and said, "That must feel really weird." I said, "Well, it doesn't." I said it would if we worked in their offices, if I had to commute to their office, but because we had to get rid of what was the Carpology office, because they didn't want that. They obviously, there was no need for they wanted us all to work from home. So I think because I work from home, I still speak to everyone. We still have team calls. That part of it hasn't really changed. So I don't sort of miss it. I think if there was lots of things that were taken away that I do, if I couldn't edit it as I want to, I might then call it a day. I'd be like, actually, this isn't for me anymore. But because I can still do what I want, it doesn't really change it. It's just the day-to-day running. I'm now not worried that an advertiser's got less money to spend this year, or subscriptions have dipped slightly. I don't have to.
Yeah, you haven't got that burden.
I haven't got that worry that we had before, which is always running a business. You are always there's always good times, but then there's always peaks and troughs. It doesn't matter what the business is; it's always up and down.
What would you do? What would you do? Let's say they turned around tomorrow and said, "You can't edit it. You got to do something else or whatever that they might want to do." What would you do?
I've got a second business that I set up a while ago that I've just expanded on. So it's like service accommodation. It's like Airbnbs.
Right.
So that I love, and then I've got like long-term lets as well. So I would continue. I would just do that basically. That's what I would because with Airbnb, it's a bit like. It's nothing like publishing, but in terms of it's down to how hard you work and how service is what you get out of it. So with my Airbnbs, I've sort of created a brand around them. Again, I suppose that's the influence of the magazine. I love how things look. I want things to look pretty. I want people to have a good experience, whether that's reading the magazine or whether that's staying at one of the apartments. So it's that part of it. I would just focus more on that and that I think, short term anyway, whether that be a long term thing or not, I don't know, but that would certainly be something that I'd want to get more on board with because I do enjoy that.
Mate, it's incredible. I'm just thinking back over and I've not been in it a long time, but the digital side of things, let alone before that, the amount of people that you deal with, see. I remember being in a very similar position to you, like you meeting up with Nigel, or you see, do you know what I mean? Like, and you just think, it's madness that it's all under that one umbrella. The amount of sort of sway that publication has had that is down to you, Rob, the team that were there at the time is crazy, mate. The amount of people that have gone through it, that are still involved in the industry, they might be at a different company, they might be in a different... You know what I mean? That's mad. When you look back at that, you must be incredibly proud. Like, from a boy who wanted to do a carp fishing publication or any form of publication to... Carpology, making it to a point where you could sell it on to a bigger umbrella company at the time that we've gone through and everything that's gone on is a mega achievement. That
thanks, it means a lot. I suppose I just never sort of think about it because it's not just me, it's not just Rob, it's the people that make it. I suppose we're like the driving force behind it, but it's all your contributors. It's like getting the best people you can get, and then again with like the design, like Lou is an amazing designer who does all the design of the magazine. It's been with us for since 2006 or something, 2007. So maybe a bit later than that, 2008. But it's done loads with it. Been there the whole time through thick and thin, and it's the same with like lots of people that have been there for us. So yeah, it is like it's lovely, like you saying those things. But yeah, it's certainly a big team thing. It's not just down to me.
Favorite issue?
126.
Oh, what's the?
That was the turning point. That was when we brought Carl out. We'd always been 132 pages. The only time we ever went above 132 was on issue 100, and we went to 164. And then when we brought Carl out, that was sort of the first issue where it was like Rob and I could put our stamp on it, and we said, right, we'll go to 144. Gaz had just started This Is Nowhere. He was on the cover, really dark cover, but had a spot colour as well, so like a fluoro cover. Terry wrote in the Rotary letter. I wrote basically almost like a bit of a begging email to him saying, like, we're changing path. We're now, just me and Rob doing it. We're going all out to make the magazine as good as it can be. Is there any chance I can get you to write a diary for us? And he came back straight away and said, yeah, I'll do that, mate. I was like, when your luck's in, like for however long, a year, 2 years before that, everything we did went wrong. Like everything went wrong. And you could say that's your own making, like, when you might be negatively thinking about things, but it just, every time it seemed to go wrong, where now everything was going right. And Terry came back and went, yeah, I'll do that. And then I was like, what a chance, me, Alma. Is there any chance you can do the Rotary letter this month? And he came back and said, yeah, I'll do that. And that went in issue 126 with Gaz, with the extra pagination, extra 16 pages, spot colour. The issue after, Terry did his then diary part one. Yeah. We then went to 164 pages. Jeez. Silver foil, and then it just went from there. So yeah, issue 126 is always like there's other ones that I like, but that one, just because it meant so much, because it was a real turning point in life in general, really, because we've been both of us, Rob and I, were like rock bottom for so long that it was like there is light at the end of the tunnel.
How bad was rock bottom?
Pretty shit. Like Rob just ate a lot and put on about probably about 4 stone. It was massive. Honestly, for lunchtimes, he did just eat his way through it. He'd go to the co-op and he'd get, like the pick and mix, he'd get a big tub of like the big strawberry jellies, big French stick, a bowl of soup, and he'd dip the French stick in it, bag of Twiglets, like the big grab bags, and then he'd go home and just eat loads and drink lots. My hair fell out.
Still holding on to it, mate.
There's not a lot there. And then, so it was pretty bad, but it's just like everything. You just sort of, I think, like the old saying, whatever doesn't break you does make you stronger, and I think that is true. Really, you learn a lot from it. And I genuinely do believe, like the times where we've had, there's been a couple of times where it's been like sailing close to the wind with going like everything folding, and I think when your back is against the wall, that's definitely when we've produced our best work. Like we've thought about things differently, done things differently. Maybe we've worked harder. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely been when you like chips are down and there isn't like you haven't got much left before you're going to run out of time. That's when we've always like come out and done better.
Fishing. We got French trips. I know we like a French trip. Why not a syndicate? Why not anything? Just time?
I've got syndicate tickets. I've got one that's an amazing ticket. Completely like no publicity. I've had it 3-4 years, and I've
never done.
I've walked around it this year. Rob and I walked around about March time. All these grand plans. Yeah, we'll definitely go once a week. Do this, and you can use boats on there. You can pretty much do what you want. And amazing big gravel pit. And we walked it again probably in May, and we'll definitely go soon. And then still haven't been. I did drop another ticket that was this year, Homersfield, which is an amazing lake.
Yeah.
But a lot of money, and it was just as much as I wanted to keep it. I said to Martin that I just like last year I fished it. I think Rob and I went for an afternoon, and it was just like for 1,500 quid or whatever it is. I was like, I just can't justify it. So I said, like, please, when I retire, if I can have a ticket then. And then I've done a bit on Waverney actually this year. Blake,
go back to
I loved it down there this winter. Blake, who his dad, Mike Davis, he bought it from the Knoxes back in the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah.
And Blake now runs it, and he messaged me out of the blue and said, I've moved back. I'm now running the complex. Do you want to like come down and we'll meet up? Because I used to know him from when he was younger. And went down there, and it is mostly caravans now. But there's still a couple of lakes, and there was one. My favourite lake on there is F Lake. It was like the first lake I ever fished, the first lake I ever viewed when I came walking down the footpath. And there's nothing like particularly big in there, and it's all vans. But this was in January. No one was in the vans. Like, you can't hire them; they're like privately owned. He said, like, we've got one that we're selling, so you can fish it. And it was just bliss. Like, it was amazing. I had it to myself, like, because of the way the swims are. I could reverse the van into it, open the boot, had my laptop, and put them out. And some of the carp, they are just mega. Like, they've just been left. Like, well, just a few people fish it, but
it's pressure.
And they are just like, I had 3 in a day that were just bangers. One was like, they're all about 12, 15 pounds, but
mega,
like, perfect linear, like perfect heart tail. Like another one, little dorsal, common that was like jet black, big, fully scaled with a proper overslung mouth. Mega carp that just been forgotten about for the last however many years. And then I've had a couple of goes went on B Lake, where Tony he had a house on it, or lodge. That was one of the first places he took me and let me fish, so it was nice going back there. And then done a couple of trips on Yew Tree and Marsh, so it's been nice going over there, and I will be going again over before the summer's out, so I'm definitely enjoying.
What's the future, mate? What's the future? Carry on, you're editing, you're busy, but is there any other plans down the line? Like, you got anything else apart from, obviously you're busy, you run your own businesses, you've got a couple of nippers and a missus. Like, life is busy.
Yeah.
But you don't strike me as the person that, like...
No, I think I'd like to keep doing the magazine as long, because I've been... Yeah, I've been doing it a long time. I've been editing it nearly 20 years now, but the passion's still there. I haven't run out. I think the only person that's done it that sort of time is probably Tim. So it's, so I don't know. I'd like to keep doing it for as long as I can until they think that someone else could do it. If I'm not doing a good job and they want to get someone else in, then I'd move over. And then, I don't know, I think I'd probably start another business or something. I think there'd be something I'd want to do.
No fishing aspirations to do anything? Just you French trips?
No, if I had more time, I'd like to do more on the rivers. Definitely like to back on the Waveney.
Trotting for otters. What are you doing?
I'd definitely like to go back on the way, do some fishing down there. Pike fishing on the Broads. I'd like to do that.
Oh yeah, nice.
And then just more French trips. Yeah, and this syndicate I've got do some time on there, and then French trips. There's so many places that I'd like to go to. More like the commercials, not doing like wild Euro trips. There's lots of commercial fisheries that I'd enjoy going to that have got big carp in that I'd like to have a go for. I'd like to get back to Rainbow. Luke Moffat's. I went there. I'd love to go back there.
Selling it, mate.
I know. I saw that. Yeah.
You should have put an offer in, boy.
I don't know if I want to move down to France. I was saying actually, when I was older, I probably would do, but not so much now. So lots of fishing. It is just having the time, and that bug has never gone. Like I've had it since I was 5, and it's always there.
Mate, you've lived and breathed it. All right, maybe not tangibly out on the bank fishing it, but to go through all that, editing the issues, getting them out monthly on the deadline, compiling everything, gluing it all together, essentially. If you didn't have a passion for that subject matter, you would be, after 20 years, mate, you'd be dead. You wouldn't be doing it, would you?
No. I've seen it with other editors. You can see where they've just lost the passion for it, and you can see that in the mag. You could see that with Carpology and Max. I'll say towards the end, it was more like when John took hold of it, he only had about 3 or 4 issues, and they were really strong issues. But between sort of, I don't know, 16 and when John took over, you could see it was when I was still doing it, and it was declining because I was losing. I don't know if the passion's the right word, because I do feel like I probably was to an extent, but I think it was more just exhaustion. I just didn't have the time capacity to.
And you've got to get it out.
Yeah, that was it. And he were just cutting corners to do it. So I don't think I've ever lost the passion for it, and I hope I never will. I don't want to. I'd hate to let the magazine fizzle, and I look back and go, I should have stopped last year or 2 years ago.
It won't, mate. That's just in your own head, but that's what keeps you going, and that's what keeps you drive. I like that. Mate, I'm honestly, like, when we talked about it, planned it, I've been fortunate enough to work with you guys in the past, and it's incredible. It is an institution, mate. Definitely in my lifetime, my generation of anglers, and to be fair, the generation current with the digital transformation, it's shaped so many people. God knows how many people it's influenced. Figures must be astounding, but yeah, mate, you've got a lot to be very proud of, and a lot of people have got a lot of thanks for you, because they wouldn't be in this industry, and the industry wouldn't be as it is, I don't think, without mediums such as that, mate. You've had some low points, but my gosh, you've done well to come out the other side and be where you are now, mate. So hats off to you.
Thank you very much,
and thank you for coming on. Before you go, quick 5 questions, mate.
I'm rubbish at quick fire, but I'll give it a go.
You've got this, mate. You've just gone through over 2 hours of me waffling at you, mate, so you can easily do this.
You say that, we'll see.
You ready? Dream fitty of the month, male and female. Pick who you like. See how I've got male and female to make it more modern and sort of inclusive.
I mean, this won't be quick. You're going to have to edit this bit down.
I'm good at that.
In carp fishing.
You can have it in carp fishing. You can widen it. You can do what you want. Dream fitty of the month, male and female. Pick them.
If it was male, it's probably got to be Jimmy Armstrong. He's quite rugged and handsome, isn't he?
I'll give you that. Jimmy is a bit of eye candy.
And then who female? I don't know. Hassan. I honestly don't. I'm rubbish at these things. Rob would know straight away.
Mate, take your stiff editorial pinstripe suit off, boy, and kick back with a beer, boy.
I think we're going to have to skip. I honestly don't know.
Be a wet wipe.
I'm rubbish at these.
It don't have to be a carp angler. You could go mainstream celebrities.
I'm trying to think of a mainstream celebrity.
Come on, mate. You must have had a mainstream celebrity. What? I mean,
the only person actually back in the day, I don't even think she's live anymore, is Tara Tompkinson. I don't know. Do you remember her? I've definitely pronounced her.
Saying.
Do you remember her?
No, Tara who?
Tara. I can't remember her surname. Something. Oh, this is embarrassing. I can't remember. She was like an it girl, from the early.
Tara something, not Tara Reid off American Pie.
No.
How old are you, Joe?
Oh, she was like.
What's going on here? She got a thing for older ladies.
When Loaded did this interview with us, they said, "Who would you want on the cover?" And I said, "Her."
Tara Farmer
something Tompkinson, yeah, something like that. I can't remember.
I hope it's not this old woman that I'm thinking.
No. She was. I think she died of an overdose. Right, but yeah, there was always her. But like I say, that was back in 2004. I mean, this is not quick. I've just waffled up.
No, that's quality, mate. I did not expect that to come out your mouth at all. That's incredible, Tara. I'm gonna.
You have to Google it. I've definitely pronounced it wrong, but her surname definitely was Tara, and it was something Tompkins. I don't know. I'm getting completely
brilliant.
confused.
I'm going to Google that later. Who wins in a fight, you or Rob?
Rob.
Why?
I'm just weak.
You sure
I don't like fighting or anything. So
you've got it up here, haven't you, mate? Your intellect.
Yeah, he's definitely stronger than me. So yeah,
just don't get caught. That's very honest. Drum and bass or country and western?
Drum and bass.
Really?
It'd be neither, but it would probably say drum and bass at the two of them.
Drum and bass. 3 celebrities you'd take fishing.
You probably won't know any. Well, you won't know Rob Dix from the Property Hub. He's not
Rob Dix. Is this a winder?
No. He's not actually a celebrity as such. He sort of is. He's got a podcast and it goes out. They've just done 20 million downloads or something.
Right, I haven't done that many downloads. I've got a podcast. I'm no celebrity, mate. I can walk through the streets, never knows who I am. So, Rob Dix.
Rob Dix, yes.
This is a joke.
He's not, honestly, he's a property guy.
What are you going to say next? Fanny Schmeller, the old Russian chopper. What's he going to... Rob Dix, this is brilliant. Come on.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Who's that? Is he a motorbike?
He's an author. He wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's an amazing book, absolutely brilliant.
This
brilliant
is
book.
So highbrow, mate.
And then Ray Dalio would be another one. So it's another highbrow.
Ray Dalio, who's that?
It's massive in economics.
massive. Just rich blokes, basically.
Oh yeah, well, I suppose they are wealthy now, but it's just the lessons that are interesting from all of them.
That sounds like a deep fishing session.
Yeah,
mate.
Sorry, it probably is a bit. Yeah. Yeah,
fair play. Your biggest regret?
Oof.
Well, that's a savage one.
I don't know if I've got any I was gonna say biggest regret. I don't know if I've got any real regrets. Things I would probably would have like Tim, the way I left Anglian pubs.
Yeah,
it is a regret, but yeah, I probably could have just done it differently. I don't sort of regret it. There isn't anything. There's not one thing in particular, just lots of little things, I suppose.
History carp you wish you caught?
The linear from Redmire, when I'm caught for, I don't think it ever got caught again, but suppose it was never found, but for years, it was for 20 years or something ridiculous.
Caught the raspberry, mate, blinking hell.
No, 20 years is an exaggeration. It was probably 10 or 11. But
you did all right out of Redmire, mate, so I'll let you off. 3 favourite cover shots. Who and what issues?
126.
Oh,
Gaz,
yes. Yeah.
Probably 150, which was a scenic shot by John Kneebone, because it was we couldn't decide on one person, so we thought we'd do like a nice scenic, and then we had the Carpology O logo,
yes,
in the middle, and then it said Carpology 100, and then probably issue 200, which had headshots of everyone that's appeared in the magazine. Everyone's written an article.
Yeah. Where did the name come from? I haven't even asked you that.
Martin Locke. So it was
Lockie?
Lockie. Originally, we were going to call it Screamer. Which Screamer is still used in it as the section, because we have sections within it.
Yeah.
We've got Scream, which is sort of the intro banter sort of part. So it was going to be called Screamer, but then it was trademarked, so we couldn't use it. And then Lockie came up with Carpology. And we all loved it instantly. And then John came up with loads and different ways of doing it. And in the end, we went for Carp uppercase, ology lowercase.
Yeah.
So that's always been like the branding. I'm quite particular about it. I do get a bit funny. Like,
I can't sense that at all. What's your idea of carp fishing hell?
I suppose being on a lake that with just lots of like bitchy people. I suppose I wouldn't fish it, but I suppose that's a very good answer. But yeah, I wouldn't enjoy it if I was on a lake where there was lots of bitchy nuts and everyone was sort of trying to get one over everyone. I don't even know if that exists or not. I don't know, but because the lakes that I have fished in the past, like Homersfield, isn't like that at all. So yeah, the idea of something like that, I wouldn't enjoy at all. I wouldn't go. I'd just rather go somewhere where I can enjoy myself and everyone gets on.
You want to get out of Norfolk? Well, I'll show you a few places. If you had to delete one, what would it be? Carpology Magazine or the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel.
Brutal, mate.
Yeah.
Cheers, Joe.
It's as much as it is the future, but the magazine's the baby.
Some of my finest hours on there, mate. In front of my phone. You can't delete them. Final question, mate. Night out on the bank or a night in with the missus? Which one are you taking? The missus and kids?
Yeah, with the missus and kids. Yeah, it would.
It's definitely not, though, is it?
It would. It would.
You well do some fishing,
we both
mate.
work really hard, so like having time together would be, yeah.
What a lovely bloke. If I didn't love you more, well, if I couldn't love you any more than I do love you now, Joe, you've launched my career. You're very well spoken, respectful, and that was a brilliant podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll be back soon with the podcast. Until then, make sure you pick up the latest episode or edition, should I say, of Carpology. Check out the YouTube channel. And Joe Wright, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Cheers.